Let's give it up for Dr. Umar Johnson. Give him a big round of applause.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for being late. There was some traffic on the turnpike coming down from Philadelphia, which kind of set me back a little bit. Then when I got close, my GPS kept taking me in a circle. We might need to lower the lights just a little bit so it can show up in the back. For those of y'all who don't know me, I see some new faces, which is always good. I'm Dr. Umar Johnson. I'm a certified school psychologist and a doctor of clinical psychology, also an educated political scientist in terms of my formal training. I'm a Pan-Africanist and a great-great-great-great-grandnephew of Frederick Douglass. As a school psychologist, I evaluate our children. I decide who goes into special education. I decide who's learning disabled, autistic, emotionally disturbed. I also decide who has ain't no daddy at home disorder. A lot of our boys are being diagnosed with ain't no daddy at home disorder. And as a result of that, they're being given all types of psychiatric medicines. Ritalin, Adderall, Strattera, Cyclert, Vyvanse, and the list goes on. I want to encourage you guys to slow down on getting your students evaluated. Slow down on getting your sons and daughters tested. Everybody seems to be looking for a test today. I need you to understand that there's nothing objective about the test that we use. Nothing is objective. I diagnose a learning disability. That's a professional opinion. It can be right. It can be wrong. I diagnose conduct disorder. That's a professional opinion. It can be right. It can be wrong. I diagnose mild mental retardation, oppositional defiant disorder, emotional disturbance, intellectual impairment, aka mental retardation. It can be right. It can be wrong. The problem is when you guys take a diagnosis that someone gave you, normally a middle-class white psychologist, and then you project the diagnosis on your child, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Stop looking for evaluations when you know what the problem is. 95% of the children I evaluate, the parents knew what the problem was before I sat down and tested them. The school knew what the problem was before I sat down and tested them. I had a young lady recently. She was 16 years old, 10th grade. Straight A's and B's all the way up until her sophomore year. This year she started failing out. D's and F's all on her report card. She was on third week, in danger of repeating. They said she needs to get tested for a learning disability. I said, wait a minute now. If this young lady went from kindergarten to 9th grade with no problems, and all of a sudden she started to fail out in the 10th grade, that's not a learning disability. Learning disabilities show up in the 5th and the 6th, not in the 10th. If you made it to 10th grade and you only got 2 years left, then chances are that's not a learning disability. So I interviewed the young lady, and what did I find out? Her grandmother, who she loved, had passed away recently. Nobody got her any grief counseling. Her grandmother raised her as if she was her mother. In fact, she was the primary caregiver. So the young lady was going through a grieving process, which is totally normal for children and adults. But because the mother and father didn't want to accept the fact that she was grieving her grandparents, her grandmother, and because the school could care less about whether she was grieving or not, she got sent to me to be evaluated for special education. She had no business being tested for special education. So you have to slow it down. Or the young boys who are hyperactive and inattentive and can't sit still, it's not because of ADHD. Sometimes it's not even because of the diet. I got African-American boys who are raised on a strictly vegan or vegetarian diet, and they're still being referred for ADHD testing. How do you explain that? Well, it's real simple. One young man, his father was locked up. He got locked up a year ago. Mother won't take him. She says she's not wasting no time to take her son up to see his daddy in jail. He should have never got locked up. So the son is being punished because the father is arrested. The son is being punished because the mother's too lazy to inconvenience herself to take him to see his father. And that brought on what appeared to be ADHD symptoms. There's all types of conditions that can mimic ADHD. So why are you so quick to reach for the pill? Why is everybody so hyper vigilant for the pill? It's because we don't want to do our jobs as parents anymore. I know we don't want to hear it, but it's the reality. Okay? Children need love, not drugs. And when a child is raised with discipline, you don't see ADHD. You don't get conduct disorder. Children who live in homes where parents have consistent discipline programs, there's no need for psychiatric medicine. This only comes up when somebody takes a break. And you have to understand as a parent, you can never take a break. What we like to do is raise them from birth until 10 years old, and then we take a break from 11 to 14. And then at 14, when they start to get out of hand, we want to reel them back in, failing to realize that you done let him go wayward for so long that now you can't bring them back in. And so now you reach for the pills because you took your time off. What you need to understand is as a parent, you're going to put your time in one way or the other. You're going to put your time in from birth until age 17, or you're going to put your time in visiting your son in jail from 17 to 35. You will put the time in, but you choose how. You can do it preventively by being a good parent, or you can do it reactionarily by visiting the child who was not raised by a good parent when he goes to jail to get incarcerated. And so now you got to take, 2 and 3 trips to the prison, all types of money on his books, lawyer fees. You're going to end up spending more in the long run if you don't do what you're supposed to do in the short run. But the problem in the hood, the problem in the African-American community, I don't care if you're middle class or poor, is the same thing. Black mothers and fathers got better things to do than raise their children. For those of us who are well educated, we too busy what? Chasing our careers. And for those of us who don't have such an education, we got to work 2 and 3 jobs to keep a roof over the baby's head and food in their mouths. So whether you're poor or rich, comfortable or not, the children are struggling because you got other priorities other than them. This is the reality. One of the biggest differences between African society, I'm not talking about 5,000 years ago, I'm talking about today. One of the biggest differences between African society and African American society is the children and elders tend to be the center of village life. But for us, they tend to be inconveniences that we try to get rid of as quickly as we can. Ain't no daddy at home disorder. You cannot change disruptive behavior unless you're going to be consistent doing it. That's rule number 1. You got to be consistent. You punish on Monday, but you don't punish on Tuesday. You punish on Wednesday, but you don't punish on Thursday. You punish on Friday, but the weekend they can do whatever the hell they want because you got better things to do. You cannot change behavior. You cannot teach discipline if you don't have it. You cannot teach discipline if you don't have it. And for my moms, I thank you all for doing an excellent job. We're doing the best you can trying to raise these boys. But I need y'all to do it just a little bit better. What I'm finding with single mothers is when there's no man in the house, the oldest boy gets elevated to man of the house status. When the oldest boy gets elevated to man of the house status, he now becomes his mother equal instead of her subsidiary. When he becomes his mother's equal, she's now dependent on that oldest son for her emotional support. And if she makes him upset, he might withhold some emotional support from his mother. So he's controlling her with his level of attention. It's important that mothers understand that he's your son. Nothing wrong with him being man of the house, but not totally man of the house to such an extent that you feel powerless to chastise him because you have made him your mate. Not sexually, psychosocially. You do an excellent job with your daughters. Daughters grow up, they're responsible, after school job, full scholarship, captain of the cheerleading team. And then look at him, Raheem, on the couch, no life, 50 tattoos. Go to school when he feel like it. And yet and still when Christmas roll around or Kwanzaa roll around, you're doing what? Buying him everything he wants, even though he didn't earn nothing. The job of a black parent raising a black boy is what? What is your essential responsibility if you're raising an African-American male child who's considered public enemy number 1? Your essential responsibility is to teach him discipline. D-I-S-C-I-P-L-I-N-E. If you do not teach that, you have failed. Because white society is waiting for him to make a mistake so they can catch him slipping. Which is why I tell you, stop giving your children warnings. There's no such thing as a warning. If they've done something that requires a consequence, give them the consequence. What is warnings for? And do you know why you spend so much time yelling? Especially my mothers and grandmothers. Why do y'all spend so much time yelling? Mothers always call me up and say, Dr. Umar, his father tell him to do something, he does it one time. But I got to ask him 3 and 4 times. I got to beg and plead. Is it because I'm a woman and his father's a dad? Nope. It's because his father's consistent and you're not. The reason you have to yell is because you're too lazy to get up and do something about what he did. Let me say that again. The only reason why you yelling is because you're too lazy to give a consequence. That's the only reason why you yelling. The only reason why you're giving out warnings is because you're too lazy to give out a consequence. All that's laziness. Cut out the warnings. Cut out the threats. Cut out the screaming. Fathers tend not to yell. We say it one time, they don't do it, they know it's a consequence coming. Why? Because men understand that they have to hold the structure together. They have to set the boundaries. It's not in our DNA. We're socialized to be a little bit more consistent with the discipline than women. Now, by nature, sisters are nurturing. But unfortunately, because of the war on black men, many of y'all have to do what? Wear both sets of the parental pants. And you got to do a little bit better job than what you are doing. You raising your daughter and you loving your son. And you have to stop that. Love them both, but raise them both too. And don't make excuses for why he's not what he's supposed to be. Because this world could care less about children with excuses. And no one cares about another black boy who didn't have enough discipline to make it. Academic discipline, emotional discipline. When I go to the prisons to speak, everybody in jail is in there for what? A lack of discipline in some area. I don't know what it is, but once I talk to them, I'll find it out. Either emotional discipline, they couldn't control their emotions, they end up taking somebody's life. Sexual discipline, financial discipline, academic discipline, but everything you become and don't become is related to discipline, especially your children. And what is the definition of discipline in the first place? I'll give you mine. It's the ability to teach a child to do what has to be done when it needs to be done, irrespective of whether he likes it or not. Now, how many of you can say that your children have academic discipline? How many of you can say that when that Miami Heat, Indiana Pacers game comes on tonight, and you know your son or daughter got a test tomorrow morning or paper due tomorrow morning, how many of them got the discipline to turn off the TV and get their work done? And I'm not going to blame the child because it was your job to teach him that. And then some of you do what? When the child graduates, you send somebody who barely got out of high school 20,000 miles away so they can go to college as if they're going to miraculously change their academic level of discipline. And so now you're taking out $20,000 and $30,000 in loans to finance his or her education at Howard or Harvard or Hampton or Spelman or UCLA or Virginia Tech or wherever you choose to send them. And then when they come back home in 2 years, dropped out on academic probation, you get mad at them when you knew they wasn't going to finish because you never taught them self-control. Come on, brother. College is the new casino. What do you do when you go to the casino for my gambling people or my folks who like to play the numbers? You put $1 down, hoping you get 100 back. You put 500 down, hoping you get 5,000. College is the new casino. It's the new gamble. You put $100,000 education down, hoping they reap about $1 million over their lifespan. But are they guaranteed to get it? Not at all. Right now, as I stand before you, 2 million black people with master's and doctorate degrees in America can't find work. The only children who should be sent are those who are guaranteed to finish, who got the discipline to finish, who want to become something that is actually relevant to the economic order. You don't pay $30,000 a year so your daughter can study how grasshoppers reproduce on the moon. You don't pay $30,000 a year so your son can study the winter weatherization of the planet Venus. Because there's no job for that. There's no business for that. 75% of all college degrees are nonsense degrees. So if you're going to finance an education, make sure it's in something that has some practical utility in the neighborhood when they're done. Half your children need to be going to trade school, becoming plumbers and carpenters and electricians, auto mechanics and bricklayers, woodworkers and HVAC specialists, computer networkers and technicians. That's where many of them should be going. 2 years, they come out certified. 2 years, no loan debt, almost no money owed to the bank. They can work for themselves, go work for the White Racers Union or whatever they choose to do. But they can make a living off of 2 years after high school. So why we got so many kids going to college? Why is every child I talk to in high school automatically going to college? Some of them ain't got no reason. Because you're trying to relive your life through your child. Or you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, and in order to look good, you got to say that my child goes to a university. Never mind the fact they're going to be drowning in debt when they get out. That's not important right now. You just want to look good. And looking good is one of black folks' biggest problems. What did Will Smith say about blacks who like to look good? And I'm not a fan of Will Smith, but he said what? He said black people love to spend money they don't have, to buy stuff they don't need, to impress people they don't even like. Half the black people you know are in debt because they're trying to outperform another Negro. Some of you included in that. They got a Lexus, I'm going to get a Benz. Their mortgage is $100,000, mine is going to be $250,000. Their child go to a white private school, I'm going to find a Jewish one. And what about that? Sending black boys to white private schools. I'm totally against it. Your daughters might can get by. Some of the girls might can get by, but the boys almost never. Even if they light skinned with green eyes, they catch the same hell. I know because I get the phone calls. I work with the lawyers. You don't take a boy from the pot and throw him right into the fire. You think he's going to get a better education because you move to a school district that has the highest SAT scores in the district or the highest per pupil expenditure in the state? That doesn't mean nothing for him because he's black. He could be in the same classroom with 25 other white kids and still get a different education. And if you're not careful, he's going to learn to hate himself while he's there. So by the time he gets to the 5th or 6th grade, he's totally turned off from learning altogether because you thought he had to learn with white folks in order to learn at all. And even if your daughter doesn't get kicked out of the school, you got to make sure she doesn't learn to hate herself. Which is why if you're going to put an African child in a white private school, you should not do so until they have a solid knowledge of self. You put a blue, black, nappy-haired, gorgeous princess in a white school, and by her 13th birthday, she's going to wear green eyes. By her 15th birthday, she's going to want to look like Beyonce. And by her 17th birthday, we won't even recognize her when she walks in the store. Because she gets taught how to hate herself. So be careful about shipping our kids off to white private schools. When did America experience the biggest boom in white private schools? When did we get most of them? The greatest expansion in white private schools came right after the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision. When they ruled, or so you thought they ruled out racism in education, that's when white private schools expanded like never before. They started popping up all over the place. Because the burden of white supremacy says what? I must always look better than black people. So the minute our children started going to the white public schools, they pulled their kids out and started private schools. So when you show up applying to a private school, they're automatically upset because they're trying to get away from you and you can't seem to leave them alone. White folks go to the suburb, you go right behind them. They open up a school for white kids, you go. They so used to you follow them now that they can't run no more. They done ran all the far they can go. So now they decided what? We're going to go back into the inner cities where we started and leave these Negroes out here. It's called gentrification. And so now they're coming back in the neighborhoods that you didn't want to live in, raising the property value by $100,000 overnight. That's right. That's right. You fail to realize communities are built. You don't move to them, you build them. White folks coming back into the worst ghettos of America, turning them into upper class neighborhoods. Something you could have done. We was left alone in the ghetto for 30 years. Ain't nobody bother us. But because black folks like to integrate with everybody except other black people, we all look for what? Ticket out the hood. And then we want to blame Lil Wayne and 50 Cent and 2 Chainz for our boys' pants sagging and the profanity coming out of their mouths. Don't blame them rappers. Blame yourself. The only reason why the rapper takes more precedent over you is because the rapper still comes to the neighborhood and you never visit. If our boys had doctors and lawyers and psychologists and business owners living next door, Lil Wayne would have no effect on them. But you got fatherless boys with no local male role models, and we want to blame the people they imitating. They would be imitating you if you didn't run away. You can take the Negro out of slavery all you want, but until the Negro takes the slavery out of himself, he'll never be free. Every black woman got a white woman swimming inside of you. And every black man got a little white boy swimming inside of you. And any Negro who says he doesn't is out of his mind. And the only way you're going to get free is to exercise your little white girl sisters and exercise your little white boys, black men. In other words, you got to die and be born again in order to be re-Africanized. That's the reality of the situation. But I don't have much hope for people over 40 years old to change. Because as a psychologist, I know behavior is quite difficult to overcome. And I know the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Yes, sir. So if the Negro was doing what they was doing yesterday, they likely to do it until the day that they die. Behavior is hard to change because the person got to want it. You got to undo the mental programming. And when you're dealing with black folks who've been raised on a steady diet of white culture and white supremacy, who have been taught to love it, I don't have much hope for you. Which is why when I open up my school, the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Pan-African School, for our boys, you won't be allowed to visit but once a month. 1 weekend for the parents, that's it. You can't stay around too long. Because if I leave you on my campus too long, you're going to turn it back into Negroes. I'm trying to re-Africanize. I can't do that with you on campus.
That's right.
And for my mothers, I want you to know up front, when your daughters come to the Anna Douglas and Amy Jakes and Ashwood Academy for African Girls, no weaves will show up on my campus. No wigs will show up on my campus. No perms or no hair color, even if it's locked, will show up on my campus. If you bring your daughter a natural, I will make her natural. I'm a trained barber. And I will cut her close, a nice natural, and she'll grow it back. I'm not punishing your daughter, but we got to understand something. The first responsibility of an educator is to teach the child to love themselves. Before math, before science, before anything else, they must be taught to love themselves. And if they're not taught that, the education they get afterwards will benefit everybody but them. Take a look at Condoleezza Rice. Brilliant woman. But because she was never taught to love self, all that education goes to the benefit of white supremacy. Take President Obama. Brilliant man. But because he was never taught to love his Africanity, all of his intelligence is used to the benefit of white supremacy. And your children will be the same way until we understand that the first education is an education in self-love. And the beauty of the girls being natural on my campus is what? All the boys will only learn but to love a natural woman. Kindergarten through 12th grade, all they will see is natural hair. So when they graduate from high school, they will only want to date a sister with natural hair because their minds are going to be engineered to love their own. So we ain't got to deal with the biracial push. We ain't got to deal with the fact that black men marry outside their race more than the men of every other race put together. And then you got a nerve to tell me it's about love. Well, if it's about love, why you seem to be more in love than everybody else? And if that's the case, why can't we find one rich white woman married to a broke black man? If it's all about love, shouldn't it go the other way sometimes? This ain't about no love. White women are very strategic. And what black men need to understand is when you do get a white woman, you got to understand that you're only dealing with the white women that the other white men didn't want. You are a leftover expert. You're not first choice. No white woman goes around wanting to marry a black man as first choice. You're the second choice. And I heard my sisters are getting liberated. Y'all want to go outside the race too, huh? That's the word on the street. Well, I got news for y'all. White men are not in a rush to marry black women. But they will lead you to think that they will just so they can get some of your African cookies and then throw you back. I've heard horror stories about sisters who thought white men was in love with them, only to get thrown back into the group after a certain amount of time. He calls you a black bee one day during an argument. He tells you you're nothing like the women of my race during an argument. You better stop getting liberated and get educated. We got to learn to love ourselves. I don't hate white women. But I understand that women live longer than men do. So if I marry a white woman, she's likely to be on this earth longer than I am. And when I die, is she going to give any of my money to the black community? When I die, is she going to give money to a black college? When I die, is she going to put any of our children through college? Michael Jordan just married a white woman who's about 20 years younger than him. So when he dies, and I'm not wishing it, when he passes on, is that white woman going to come help the hood with that money? No, sir. Of course not. Marriage is about business. And that's why white women only marry black men who got something going for themselves because they know it's about economics. It ain't knowing the natural order of things. He's going to leave the earth before she does. And the sadness of interracial marriage is black men give their money to white women who already belong to a people who got it all, taken from those who need it. It's an act of treachery and it's sabotage. I don't hate white women. I respect them. I respect white men. But I am unapologetically African. I'm loyal to my people first. Right. And some of you folks are getting confused. Obama and Al Sharpton, a Negro with the perm, running around telling you that you got to be for everybody else's struggle because they was for yours. Oh, really? Right. Where was the Mexicans at when we was getting dogs sicked on us? Right. Where was the homosexuals at when we was going to jail 300 times in a week? Right. Don't talk to me about no integrated struggle. First of all, you should never let nobody confuse their behavior with your identity. You came out of your mother an African, you can't change that. But they somehow remixed and it got you thinking that wanting to have sex with somebody of the same gender is equivalent to your racial state of existence. Who played that game with you? And do you know why the homosexual thing is so popular in the first place? Well, let me tell you, it has nothing to do with sex. It ain't got nothing to do with lust. It ain't got nothing to do with culture. It ain't got nothing to do with marriage rights. The reason they want black boys to sleep with black boys and black girls to sleep with black girls is because two people with the same reproductive organ cannot reproduce. That's right. This is about African racial extermination. Will you please wake up and stop getting into these arguments over whether they was born this way or not? This is about reducing your numbers. You saw what the Food and Drug Administration did last month. The federal courts required that they do what? Make the morning after pill available.
To any girl in America 15 years or older, she can walk into the pharmacy store and get a morning after pill without your permission. This is about population control. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. What did she say was America's #1 domestic threat? Not terrorism, not Al-Qaeda, but population control, which is just a fancy way of saying there's too many black people being born on the planet Earth. Wake up and smell the coffee. If you ain't noticed, public schools is on their way out. Have you seen that? I've been telling y'all that for 5 years. I said he's a conspiracy theorist. Ain't no conspiracy now. I told y'all before Obama got in office that he was going to undo Africa and not do a damn thing for black folk. But it's come to pass now. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a political science. Anything I tell you, you can best believe it's going to happen because I study the facts. Why are they getting rid of public education, y'all? And they're using charter schools to do it. Because black people was brought to America to serve. Your job was to work, to labor. But your labor is no longer needed. They got 3 million illegal, undocumented immigrants who are willing to do your job for less than minimum wage. So what we need schools for? If the school's job is to teach your child how to read, write, and do math so their labor can be exploited by American capital, and it's no longer needed, why do you need a school if you don't need the worker in it? So they're letting the charter schools suck up all the good students. And so the only thing that's going to be left is those black boys that nobody wants to be bothered with, the ones without daddies, the ones who've been to juvenile hall, the ones taking 2 or 3 psychiatric drug cocktails. You thought that building an African-centered school was an option. It ain't no option no more. It's a requirement. How old is the United States Department of Education? United States Department of Education was created in 1980. If you don't believe me, check the history. The United States Constitution doesn't give your child a right to learn. The Constitution doesn't even mention education. It doesn't mention the word democracy either, but that's another discussion. Your child got a state right to get an education, not a federal right to get an education. There ain't no civil rights in education. So they shutting the schools down. So let me ask you this. If we already got mass incarceration of black teens and black men when they go to school from 8 to 3, what's going to happen when they ain't got to go to school at all when you at work? You think you got prisons now? You ain't seen nothing yet. In Pennsylvania, where I live, they're building 4 new maximum security prisons. State representative told me they wanted 10 of them. But they didn't have the money, so they settled for 4 maximum security prisons. And guess what the state chief of corrections said about the 4 new jails? He said when they are done being built, we would have run out of space the first day. Do you realize that the prison is nothing but a slave ship without water? Slavery didn't go nowhere. It just transformed. Slow down, y'all, on that miseducation thing. Don't let nobody test your son for no learning disability until you talk to me first. Don't let nobody tell you your son need to be tested for ADHD unless you talk to me first. But some of y'all don't listen. You rather listen to white folk than black people. I understand the psychosis. But the problem is what? You don't listen to Dr. Umar, you go get him a prescription. And them side effects that I keep telling you about, you know, those schizophrenia side effects when he start hearing things and seeing things, and he can't go to sleep or can't stay awake or he can't eat or can't stop eating, when his heart starts feeling funny and his kidneys start shutting down, and now he got to go to dialysis because you wanted him to be able to sit still long enough to be miseducated. And those side effects kick in, then you're going to say, my God, let me stop giving Raheem these drugs. Dr. Umar told me not to do this, but I thought the white teacher knew best. I've been studying psychology for 20 years. She's never studied it one day, but you're going to listen to her over me. Ain't that something? And so then you stop giving your son the medication, and then what do? They send the social workers to your house. School tells us your son has prescribed some medicine, and you don't want to give it to him. If we find out that you stop giving that boy the medicine again, we're going to take the baby from you. And when they come to your house to take the children, do they only take the one who's prescribed the ADHD meds? They take all of them. I know 25 families across America right now who ain't got no kids at home no more because y'all don't like to listen. ADHD is no solution. Drugs don't solve problems. The Drug Enforcement Agency of America classifies Ritalin as a Schedule II drug. That means it's just as addictive as cocaine and opium. If you don't believe me, go to the library on Tuesday and look it up. DEA drug regulation and see whether or not Ritalin is classified with cocaine and opium if you think I'm lying to you. Let's get into presentation. And before y'all leave here tonight, when we're done, we're going to go out and get my books. If you're raising a black child, you need one. I'm not pushing my book. I'm pushing the information in it to save our children. Because y'all got a big belief in white folks. You think public schools is on your side. You need to understand that the public school is an extension of the prison system, and teachers are the new police officers. And anything you tell a classroom teacher can and will be used against your child. You need that book, because in my book, I'm going to tell you how to deal with disruptive behavior without no drugs. That's the second to the last chapter. In my book, you're going to get all the definitions for ADHD, conduct disorder, ODD, LD, all of it. So next time somebody tell you your child got a problem, you open up Dr. Umar's book, look at the criteria, and say, I don't think so. In my book, I got a frequently asked questions section that teaches you how to deal with specific issues that come up in school. What should I do if I don't want my child tested in the school, keep on pressuring me? It's real simple. You write a letter and tell them to leave you the hell alone. Your son ain't going to special ed. Next. The power is yours until you give it away to the school. But once you let them put your kid in special ed, they can almost force you to keep them in special ed. So the goal is to never even go down that road. If a black boy can't read by the time he finished the 5th grade, there's an 85% chance he'll be in jail by his 25th birthday. And putting a black boy in special ed because he can't read ain't going to teach him how to read. In fact, as the years go on, the skills gap between him and other kids is going to get wider and wider and wider. And then you're going to come to me in 12th grade and say, Dr. Umar, I just found out my special ed son is not going to get a regular diploma. He's going to get a certificate of completion. And I'm going to say, I told you to keep him out of special ed. But what we're going to do is give the diploma back to the principal, because special ed goes from age 3 to 21. So if your son is about to graduate at 17, 18, and 19 and he can't read, give the diploma back. He will not walk in graduation. The school is required to give him a free and appropriate public education. It's called FAPE, F-A-P-E. And so if he ain't ready to leave high school, don't let him leave yet. Make them teach your son. They're required to do it until he's age 21 or graduates, whichever happens first. Does your son automatically need to go on special ed if he's ADHD? That don't exist anyway, but since you think it do, let's deal with it. Does your son automatically need to go on special ed because he's ADHD? No. A child only goes to special ed for ADHD if the ADHD is affecting his ability to learn. If your son is learning fine and he got diagnosed with ADHD, you don't let them test him for special education. If he got behavior problems, he gets a behavior plan, but he does not get an IEP, inferior education plan, unless the ADHD is affecting his ability to learn. I want to talk about this first. White supremacy's new clothing, the myth of post-racial America, because a lot of us think that black people are doing better. You think we're doing better since slavery. You think we're doing better since Obama. So I want to show you some statistics from white people to show you that you ain't doing no better. When black folks got out of slavery, and when did we get out of slavery? December of 1865, not 1863. Emancipation Proclamation freed absolutely nobody. It freed slaves who were in states that were in armed rebellion, which means he freed people he had no authority to free. Slavery ended with the passage of the 13th Amendment in 1865. But needless to say, there was the Africans here who were never slaves too. You must keep that in mind. So, in December of 2015, what do we celebrate? 150 years out of slavery. That's our centennial and a half. 150, December of 2015. My question to you, with $1 trillion in spending power, what do you have to show for it? Any supermarkets? True independent schools? Factories? Airlines? Distribution networks? Healthcare systems? Services for your elderly? Hell no. You got sneakers and cars and houses and hair, pocketbooks and clothes. You major in buying things that depreciate with value. That's your 150th celebration from slavery gift to Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. That's what they fought for, so you can look good. That's what they fought for you to move to the suburbs. That's what they fought for you to give everything they fought, died, and struggled for to sexually confuse people. And now we got black folks fighting for the illegal immigrant rights. You're crazy. Do you know why the illegal immigrant wants to come here? Why the Mexicans sneaking across the border? To take your job, your house, your child's scholarship, and you got the nerve to be helping them do it. I'm for immigrant rights. Why is the immigrant even coming here? To replace you? I'm for the Hispanic rights. What are they even coming here for? To replace you? Every time you champion somebody else's cause over and above your own, you automatically reduce your level on the priority list. We got some sisters fighting the feminist agenda. I'm a feminist. Really now? Where you get that word from? The white woman's live movement? You wasn't calling yourself that before the white women started it. Nothing wrong with being an African womanist. But the difference between the womanist and the feminist is the womanist fights beside her man and the feminist wants to destroy him. Stop letting white folks give you concepts to fight for and come up with your own. When the white woman fought the white man, it was understandable. Why? He controlled her ability to work. He controlled her ability to learn. He controlled the way she dressed. He controlled every aspect of her life because he controlled the society. But black woman, has the black man ever been able to control your ability to work? Control your ability to get educated? Control your ability to get health care? We ain't got no damn control over ourselves. More or less you. So when you got involved with the white feminist movement, that was nothing but a hijack of your power. The black man can't control you from doing nothing. But she used your numerical strength. And let me ask y'all a little trivia question, ladies. Why were they so interested in getting the black woman out the house, going to college, to work, and get a career? What was it about that? Was it empowerment for the black woman? Is that why they wanted you out the house? Not at all. You know why they wanted you out the house, sister? Because they wanted to make sure there was nobody who could stop them from controlling the minds of your children. They wanted to raise the black kids without no interference. That's why they got you out the house. That's right. So when the sexually confused movement came on the TV, you'd be too busy at work to tell the kids what's really going on. This was Machiavellian. Get both parents out the house and let the government raise the kids through music, movies, and magazines. You better learn how to think a little bit more strategically out here. So, this is the ground plan for the school. It's being developed by an architect who's working with me. It's going to be a residential school. We're going to have an aviation academy. We're going to teach African children how to fly planes. Okay, we're looking into a submarine academy. Okay, we're going to have an agricultural clinic, botany clinic. Okay, our children will have to do what? Master academic disciplines as well as hand trades. Okay, so you can be a plumber and you can be a pharmacist. You can be a lawyer and an architect. You can be a psychologist and an auto body mechanic. I don't know who told us our kids had to choose one or the other. They're going to be working for 80 damn years. Why not have a couple things? That's right. I want our children, when they graduate, I want them to be able to break down a computer, put it back together again. Take a car apart, put it back together again. In order to graduate, they got to fly you around the campus up in the air. And if you're too scared to get to play with your son, he don't get a degree. They got to go to Africa for 1 year. They got to learn an African language. It amazes me, even our African center schools run around teaching our kids Spanish and Greek and French and Latin. They already got one slave master tongue. You wouldn't give them a second. Half the Afrocentric schools ain't nothing but Eurocentric schools with a dashiki and a drum any damn way. And I can say that because I test the kids and the test scores ain't too much better. So no, I'm not happy with most of them. There's a couple exceptions. Still got George Washington. You still got Abraham Lincoln. You still got the same curriculum. You just got a drum and a dashiki and some Egyptian musk on it. That don't change nothing. Who y'all fooling? Not me. See, they can play that game with y'all, but I test the kids, so I know who's learning and not. It's easy to make a school look like they learning. Our kids is doing good. Charter schools love to tell you that, don't they? Look where we started out. Our kids were below basic. 5 years later, all of our kids are above basic. They're exceptional and beyond. Show me a picture of the students who was there in the first year. Show me a picture. I want to see a picture. Now show me a picture of the kids who this year. Well, I'm noticing only 10% of the kids who started with you are here now. You know what you did, charter school? All you did was kick out the low achieving schools and send them back to the public school and took kids off your list who you knew had the grades and test scores. You didn't raise a damn thing. All you did was engineer your population. Keep following for them CNN articles if you want about them Negro schools that excel so greatly. See, I know the truth. You got to wake up and smell the coffee. Income, black versus white. Average take-home pay for a white family, $40,000. For a black is 25 grand. That's a difference of $15,000. That could be a difference of child care. That could be a difference of college. That could be a difference of medical coverage. Female-headed black homes only bring home $17,900 to $25,600 for the white female. Single black men take home pay 17 grand a year, white men 25 grand. Single black women take home pay 13.7 compared to 15.8 for the white woman. Married black couples bringing home 45,000, 52,000 for the white. Poverty, individual poverty. Only 8% of white people live in poverty. Why is this important? Because y'all love to tell me about how white folks is in the same boat as you. Y'all love to do that. I was at a lecture last night. Sister said, Brother Umar, I heard the whole black thing, but you ain't say nothing about white people. Because I'm not worried about them. They got people to speak for their issues. I'm unapologetically African. No pastor, no imam, none of you going to convince me to put nobody else on the same level as my own people. And the interesting thing about Negroes is you fighting for folks who don't even need your help. I ain't got time to be saving nobody else's children. What the hell our boys is catching? That's right. That's right. But on Sunday and Friday and Saturday, you go to the religious service and they tell you that you got to love all God's children equally. That's what got Africa in the condition she in now. And you still ain't learned from that mistake. That's right. Your humanity is your greatest blessing, as the great scholar, warrior, ancestor, Pan-Africanist John Henry Clark said. Your humanity is your greatest blessing, but it's also your worst curse because you don't know how to control it. You love people who you know don't love you. And then you think you're doing God's will by doing it. No, God thinks you're a fool. You was put on this earth to do what? Control and amass power, not get used and abused and exploited. You wasn't brought here to be a slave. You wasn't brought here to be a second-class citizen. And you was not born so white supremacy could dominate your life. But you think so. 26% of black folks live in poverty. 23% of black families live in poverty. That's a quarter order. Only 6% for whites. Female-headed homes, 40%. That's almost half of black homes headed by women are in poverty. Female-headed homes, 27. Ain't we all the same? Hell to the no. Since when? A black man with a bachelor's degree earns what a white guy earns with a high school diploma. Black man with a doctorate get what a white boy get with a bachelor's degree. And then they came up with this word that confused all of you called black middle class. Ain't no such thing as a black middle class. Do you know what class means? Class refers to your ownership of wealth, the means of production. That's businesses, land, real estate, significant stock investments. That's what wealth is. When you say black middle class, somebody got to own something. But you know what they did? They played a game on you. They rewrote the definition of class and said class only deals with how much education you got and what job you work at, not how much money you take home or how much wealth you got. Let me give you an example. You got a sister with 5 kids. She got a master's degree. She's a school teacher. She's classified as middle class. Why? Because she got a master's degree and she's a school teacher. She's classified as middle class because it doesn't include her income. But then when you look at her take-home pay after they kill her taxes and look at how she got to spread that money across for all of her children, guess what? She's living in poverty or just above it. But because they rewrote the definition, any black person with a master's degree think they middle class even though that they starting off negative $75,000 in debt. What is the definition of power? It's the ability to define reality and make the victims accept it. You buy into this middle class definition. You buy into this freedom definition. You ain't free. Free to do what? Get your hair done? Free to do what? Marry white women? You ain't free to do the right thing. Black people have freedom. F-R-E-E-D-U-M-B. That's what you are. Freedom. That's right. You ain't free. That's right. Yeah, I'm going to crush your ego because you shouldn't even have one. It's a European concept. Poverty. 60% of black children live in poverty. That's more than half. 60% of all black children in America live in poverty. Right now. Only 30% for white. Let's look at education. High school diploma or more, 85% white, 60% black. Poor children, 40% black, 11% white. Crime, 28% of black men will enter prison and only 4% of white men in their whole life. Only 4% of white men have ever got to think about going to jail. For black men, it's 1 out of every 4. It's so normal to our culture that we got to think about it every day. Infant to prison, 1 out of every 4 black boys will go to jail, 1 out of every 6 Hispanics, 1 out of every 23 white folks. Life expectancy for the white male is 72 years, for the black male, 65. I would argue that that number is significantly inflated. Because I know a lot of brothers going to their death at 25 and 35, but they're talking about natural death or death through health issues, not homicide. And also, this does not include black men in jail. Prisoners are not included when they do census data to make the numbers look better. White female lives to be 80. So if the black male lives to be 65 and the white female lives to be 80, she got 15 more years with your money and you gone. She ain't going to even give your mother none. Fool. Infant mortality. 16 black babies die for every 1,000, only 6 for whites. And by the way, this is irrespective of class, because some of y'all into the class thing. It ain't racism, Dr. Umar. It's class. It's about poverty and education and opportunity. Oh, really? How about even when you control for class, the infant mortality rate doesn't drop? How about even when you control for class, the incarceration rate doesn't drop? You got these black socialists running around telling you that your problem ain't capitalism, it ain't racism, it's capitalism. And why do the black socialists love to tell you to stop worrying about racism and start worrying about capitalism? It's because half of them in love with white women. That's right. And that's my problem with you black socialists. Y'all want to date white women. Every time I go to your meetings, you got white women in there. Oh, that's just a solidarity group. Now, black women, what y'all need to do is start going back to midwifery school. Learn how to deliver them babies in the house. That's what you need to start doing. White women have the fastest growing home birth rate in America. So if a white woman don't want to deliver a baby in a hospital, how much more should you not want to? You know what these white midwives are charging to give you a baby at home? $5,000, $10,000. Some of them $25,000 to come into your house and bring that African back into this world. Why ain't y'all doing that? Sisters, you become a midwife, you can live off that income. 6 babies and you good. In fact, you could go set up shop at a project. You ain't never got to go home. Babies coming out every day. You be wealthy as hell, filthy rich. You go to the hospital, they want to lay you down this way. They want you to have a baby vertically. Don't nobody have no baby vertically. Excuse me, horizontally. They have the babies vertically. And so gravity ain't working with you because you want to be comfortable and cute and sophisticated. So the baby ain't coming out because you wasn't drinking enough water anyway. So they want to do what? Put that epidural in your spine. And then they put the epidural in your spine, and now the baby heart rate start going up. Now the doctor said, I think we got to take him out because the heart going too bad. Heart was fine until they gave them drugs. So now they got to cut your stomach open, pull the baby out, and everybody going to tell you that cesarean section is considered what? Emergency surgery, so they get 3 times as much money from health insurance. And when you come back for your second baby sisters, guess what? They want to cut you open again. Why? Because number 1, they don't want to spend 16 hours looking at this black uterus. And number 2, they get more money for cutting open the stomach. Have your baby like Caesar did. Stop trying to be white. What did Marcus Garvey tell us? Marcus Messiah Garvey said that if the Negro is not careful, he will drink in all the poison of Western civilization and he will die from the effects of it. You will drink in all the poison of Western civilization and die from the effects of it. Now we got record numbers of black women got to get brain surgery, pieces of their skull taken out, side effects of perm and weave. Come on, brother. You're literally killing yourself to look white. And I don't think it's cute, by the way. Anyway, well, y'all get your stomach's tummy tucked and your stomach gets shrink so you can get all skinny. Now you got a big ass head with a little body. That ain't cute. That is not attractive. I want to tell your sisters it's not cute. Before you had a nice shape, nice frame, you had it popping, but you wanted to look like the white women. But you failed to realize that you got an African head. And you're going to put this big old African head on a little smoker body, and everybody going to know that that ain't your body, that you done had some damn surgery. Leave it alone. Don't you like my new look? No, I don't. You look better before. Eyes all big, hanging out your head because the skin done got all skinny, now the eyes hanging out. I don't know what's wrong with y'all. AIDS infections. 43% of people living with AIDS are black. 43% of people living with AIDS are black. 43% of people living with AIDS in America are black. Where did AIDS come from? Rockefeller family gave the grant to the United States Army Bioweapons Lab right here, Fort Detrick, Maryland. They manufactured 18,000 liters of the HIV virus. They gave it to homosexuals in New York, LA, and they also gave it to Africans in the smallpox vaccinations. and everybody who got that vaccination came up HIV positive. AIDS was made for you. If you don't believe me, I got a good book for you. You can read from a white folk, because I know you don't want to read from a black folk. It's called Emerging Viruses. Dr. Horowitz, one of the top biochemists in the world, shows you in the book how they made AIDS. Not only AIDS, but Ebola, West Nile, and half the cancers that we catching. Do you know that half the cancers you get were developed on the way to coming up with AIDS? But if you do want to read a good book written by a black man, read the book by Boyd Graves. Homosexual brother from the U.S. Air Force or Navy. He contracted AIDS, did the research on it, found the United States government flow chart. They killed him. He's dead now. But you can still get his book. It's called State Origin. State Origin of the HIV AIDS virus. And you can pull out the flow chart. And by the way, HIV don't cause AIDS. HIV ain't got nothing to do with AIDS. The only thing HIV tests for is antibodies that anybody can have because they breathe them in through the air and out. Am I wrong, Doc?
Right, brother, you're right.
You get AIDS from the government. And sisters, y'all need to be careful because a lot of the bisexual brothers out here passing off to y'all. So y'all need to be careful in your relationships. I'm seeing sisters drop off the choir like crazy at the church. Pastor not saying nothing about it. Sisters disappearing from the congregations. AIDS as a result of bisexual contact. Ladies, you got to be very careful. You don't know if your man is homosexual, study his friends. If you ain't never seen his friends, you got a reason to be concerned. Invite him over for tea or supper, game 7 or something, but make sure you see who you're hanging with. Okay? And you want to look for the brother who ain't got no eyebrows.
All right.
Because if he's homosexual, somebody in the peer group is going to be flaming. Guaranteed. There's only going to be one, but he will be flaming. And once you see him, you're going to know what it's hitting for. Okay? And as a therapist, I can tell you, you can't always tell a homosexual brother, because some of the brothers who confessed to me in private that they was homosexual, you couldn't have made me believe they was gay if they didn't tell me themselves. Blows my mind. Married men, I'm homosexual and I'm here to talk to you because I don't know how to tell my wife. Damn. I don't know how you're going to tell her either. Call her up. Ladies, y'all got to be careful. I don't know where black men get this fetish for other men from. I thank God I was never exposed to that type of stuff. And y'all got to protect your sons because most of our young men are entering into homosexuality through molestation.
Yep. Talk about it.
Before puberty. Most of the black homosexual boys I work with were molested by men in their family by their 12th birthday.
There you go.
Supervise your children, especially the little girls. Especially them little girls. It only take, what, a minute for a child to get molested?
Yep.
I knew one boy, he went in the kitchen. Whole family is in the living room watching television. He went in the kitchen. While he was in the kitchen, his uncle or his older cousin made him put his privates in his mouth. And then he went back out like nothing happened. He got molested that fast. You go over your sister's house with your kids, you can't leave your kids to play with her kids unless you know what her kids been exposed to. Go ahead upstairs and play with your cousins. That's over with. Play in front of me. Damn that. White privilege. If you're going to talk about white racism, you got to talk about white privilege. The reason why, no matter how many civil rights bills we get, our situation don't get better is because we always fighting white racism, but we don't do nothing about controlling the privileges that white people got. And you need to understand that. No, who is that, Lionel Richie? You got to understand that even the brokest white person got more power than you do. You don't believe me? Y'all remember Henry Louis Gates?
Yes, sir.
Remember he climbed into his own house? He the oldest black man in the neighborhood. He been living there for 20 years. Every white person on the block know who he is. He's a damn millionaire. White supremacy's top Negro scholar. Climbing in his house with a suit and they gonna act like they didn't know who he was. Called the cops on him. And then the cops show up in his house. He opens up the door. 2 young white cops. Sir, we heard that you was breaking in. No, this is my house. You see my degrees from Harvard. Here's my award. We need more proof. And locked his ass up in his own house. He's a millionaire, PhD, top Negro scholar for white folks. And 2 little broke cops locked him up. So don't tell me it's about class. It's about power and racism.
That's right, sir.
What is white privilege? The benefits afforded to white people, material and immaterial, purely for being white, whether they're conscious of it or not. The white person don't have to know they benefit from being white. It's difficult for them to see it because they've always benefited. You don't know until you lose that privilege. And what black people need to understand is that there's no white person who's going to voluntarily turn in their white privilege card to be treated as an equal with a Negro. Show me a white person in history who ever said, I want to be treated equally with black folks and meant it. Never. Even in the anti-slavery movement. William Lloyd Garrison, who started the anti-slavery movement, who worked with my ancestor. What happened when slavery ended in 1865? Frederick Douglass and Martin Delany and Harriet Tubman, they went to William Lloyd Garrison. They said, why are you disbanding the American anti-slavery movement? He said, because black people are free. Freddie Douglass said, no, they're not. My people ain't got jobs. They ain't got education. They ain't got no homes. They're not equal. He said, wait a minute, Fred. I didn't fight slavery for equality. I fought slavery so y'all could be free. I never said nothing about y'all being equal. That's right, black people. Y'all think freedom and equality is the same thing. I could fight for the freedom of dogs and cats and snakes because I don't think you should have them in your house. That don't mean I think they my equal. Too much wishful thinking going on in the black community. Half these white liberals you got belonging to your organization, they're only there because they're writing grants in your organization's name behind your back. Where they trying to get some political clout in the black community so when they run for office, they get some votes. You keep looking for good white people and you can't never find them. Stop the hunt. Ain't no white folk looking for good black people. You're all in the same boat as far as they're concerned. Freedom from racism. White people don't have to think about racism, as no people in the world has the ability to systematically deprive white people of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What are you talking about, Dr. Umar? I'll explain it to you real simply. If you get pissed off at a white person, it don't matter. You can't affect their job. You can't affect their mortgage. You can't mess with their children's education. You getting mad at your boss, your next door neighbor means nothing. But let your next door neighbor get mad at you. Their cousin is your supervisor. Their nephew is your son's principal at school. White folks have connections through the structure and the establishment of the American social order, and they can thereby affect the quality of your life or your children's life. You can't do the same thing. You got to understand what white power is, and most of us do not. Invisibility. White people don't acknowledge black people and don't have to. Black people are invisible until white people need you. LeBron James wouldn't even be known if they didn't need him. But they found a way to make millions off of him so they know who he is. Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jackson, you name them, Oprah. These people are invisible until you're needed. And when you're no longer needed, you become invisible. Look at Jesse Jackson. When they needed Jesse, nobody got in trouble. Now they don't need Jesse. They got Obama now. Now his son going to jail. When they're done with you. Your relationship with white supremacy is never permanent. And this is why I don't understand why black people sell out their people, because sooner or later you're going to get sent back to the same people who you turned on. Yeah. It is always that way. But the problem is most of us as black parents raise our children to be sellouts. What do we tell our kids? Go to school, get a good job, and get the hell out of here. You don't teach your kids racial loyalty. Jewish children are taught loyalty to the community. Italian children are taught loyalty to that Italian flag. East Indian children are preached loyalty before they come here. Don't nobody come to America looking for integration. If they cared about integration, what they got a Chinatown for? If they cared about integration, why is there a little Italy, little Korea, little Cambodia, little Arabia? Where's little Africa? No damn where. Own nothing and happy not to own nothing. Got a nerve to go back to the Chinese store you've been shopping at for 50 years and you short 5 cents. You've been shopping there since you was 5, now you 50. You are short 5 cents. And what did they make you do? Go get it. No can do. And you said, white supremacy going to fall, white supremacy going to fall, white supremacy going to fall, white supremacy is going to fall, but what's going to be replaced with? Chinese supremacy? You think that's going to be even better? Arab supremacy? You think that's going to be even better? You praying and wishing white supremacy away, but you fail to recognize what's coming right after it. Why ain't you trying to put yourself in a position so you could do something about it? What did Marcus Garvey say? He said that Negroes' intelligence has been dumbed down so much that we cease to think about the things that really matter. Worst day of the year is Sunday during the fall and winter. 2 million black men sit in front of their TV from 8 in the morning to midnight watching football games. What if we could get black men to come to a meeting every Sunday of the fall and winter from 8 in the morning to midnight? You sisters, 4 million black women every week sit down together at their TV to watch Scandal. Sit down together at their TV to watch basketball. While look at all those hours of time you wasting as if you got the luxury of taking your time. You got to change your thinking before we can have an economic revolution, before we can have a cultural revolution, before we can have an academic revolution, before we can fix the black family. We got to have a psychological revolution. You got to change the way you think, act, and feel. Until you do that, nothing happens. Invisibility. Racial terrorism. Black people walk around daily with a subconscious awareness that their lives can be altered any minute by white people. White power domination. All whites have the privilege of knowing they exercise a degree of control over the lives of black people, whether they be rich or poor. Denial of racism. Denial of racism keeps it alive because it's difficult to prove racist intent. As racist motives are largely invisible, the monster continues to live. This is why black people don't like to sue for racism. What happens when you sue your boss in court? You know what you got to prove? You got to prove that they did it because you were black. How do you prove what the hell they was thinking? You know they did it because you was black. But the judge said you got to prove. How the hell do you prove a mental event? You can't see them. But this is how white supremacy gets off the hook. I was a part of a class action lawsuit, Kobe Bryant School District, Lower Merion. The lawsuit was to prove that Lower Merion High School, and I was the expert psychologist in the case, disproportionately placed black kids in special ed because they were black. We won some of the case, but lost some of the case. We lost the part because we couldn't prove racist intent. The white lawyers had to show that they put the black kids in special ed because they were black. You can't prove that. We knew it, but we couldn't prove it. And that's how white supremacy perpetuates itself. Then they get mad at Kobe. He don't do nothing for the school. I wouldn't do nothing for y'all racists either. Free expression. White people don't have to hide their racism as a condition of white privilege. You got to hide yours. How many of y'all heard of white teachers who call little black kids the N-word in class? Still got their job. White folks ain't got to hide their racism. How many state senators and U.S. congressmen then said racial remarks and was heard over tape and ain't nobody lose their job? Now, once in a while, somebody gets forced to resign, but most of the time, nobody got to go nowhere. But let them catch you saying something about a European, and you'll be out of a job. Becoming white. I don't know if y'all know this, and I want my young people to know this. Not all white folks were white at the same time. At one point in time, you cannot be considered white unless you were Anglo-Saxon blue blood. It wasn't until 1940 census that they started including Jews, Italians, Greeks, Irish, and other Southern Europeans as white people. And they got a nerve to want to look down upon us when you just got your probationary status about 40 years ago. You Irish people, you was here because of the potato famine. Y'all was starving like hell over there in Ireland. You damn Italians and you Jews, y'all was the biggest drug dealers in the hood, and now you want to look down on somebody hanging on the corner. That's right, y'all do know that before us, all the drugs were sold by white people. Meyer Lansky and Dutch Schultz and Lucky Luciano and Al Capone, these wasn't black people. They dealt the drugs, they did the black on black crime, they did the booze, but nobody said they did it because of their DNA was defective. But soon when black folks start selling drugs, oh, we think there's a gene that predisposes black men to be violent. Look at the games they play on you. And then they gave the Italians the fire department, and gave the Irish the police department, and gave the Jews all the downtown jobs in city government to help make them be white. And sent you to do the illegal work that they used to do, and then built prisons for you, but didn't build none for them. Come on, y'all. You got to know your history and stop letting people make you think that you created your own problems. Your number one enemy is white supremacy. Now, you're the number one accomplice because you don't do nothing about it. And many black people in their daily work help out white supremacy any way that they can. In fact, every black person loves to be a pro bono attorney for white people. You love to defend white people without nobody asking you for it. You ever see black people do that?
Yes,
well,
sir.
wait a minute, not all white people.
Yep. Yep.
Not my boss.
Yep.
Your boss don't even like your ass.
Yep.
But you out here arguing with black people about a white folk. You'll never find a white person.
Yep.
Argue with white folks about black people because you are in love with your master. Love them to death. Black person to kill you, you talk about the wrong white person on the wrong day. And don't talk about that picture of white Christ. I'm going to talk about it. not your religion. I have nothing wrong with Christianity. Marcus Garvey was a Christian. It's all about how you use it. But that pale thing on your wall at home right now, and I know some of y'all got it because we in the South. That was painted by Leonardo da Vinci in 1482, and they got a damn thing to do with Jesus. It's painted for the church so they could use that image of white Jesus so they could proselytize all the black folks when they came to Africa. That picture of Jesus has probably been the greatest weapon of mass destruction ever entered into the black community. And the fact that you don't want to give yours up is only proof positive that you're still a slave. Leonardo, 1482, 10 years before Columbus. Is that a coincidence? No! That picture would be used to brainwash millions of black people. For those of you who've been to Africa, I've been several times, wherever you go, you find that white Christ.
Yep.
Am I wrong?
No, sir.
When I was in Ethiopia, I'm in a damn cradle of civilization, where Christ was really born at, and it was hard to find a black picture of Jesus in Ethiopia. Finally found one at the airport, though. And who did Leonardo use for the 12 disciples? Anybody know their Bible history?
Family member.
Criminal family members. Oh, yeah. So you ain't got no Jesus hanging up on your wall. You got a devil and 13 pedophiles. Some of y'all got the small one. Some of y'all got the big one. Some of y'all got the high def. Some of y'all got it on your Bible. Some of you got it on your pocketbook. Some of y'all got a dashiki with that shit on it. And then when I say why you ain't burned it yet, because this has been in my family for 100 years. Yeah, so has post-traumatic slavery disorder. You don't make no excuses for keeping a white Christ in your house, teaching your children to be subservient. Let me tell you something about the brain. The brain is an associating organism. So anything you feed it, it will automatically draw conclusions about other stuff. So if you raise a black kid on a steady diet of white Christ as God, your son will begin to generalize that to all white men. If Jesus is God and Jesus is white, the cop must also be godly. The judge must be godly. My principal must be godly. And maybe that's why white people are in charge, because they are of God. What do the scientists say is the age at which children know their race and also their race's place in the world? 4 years old. Before your baby go to kindergarten, you done already brainwashed them. Stop talking about public school. You did it in your house. I come in your house, what kind of toys your son got? Hulk Hogan? Batman, Superman, all these crackers. Your daughter, look at all them Barbie dolls. Don't none of them look like her.
That's right.
And did you see the new Barbie doll they got? Blue, black, purple with a blonde weave and blue eyes. With this little mini skirt on.
That's right.
Y'all better go to the toy store and see what they selling your daughters out there.
That's right.
And then they made the frog princess. What the hell? You know what a frog looked like? Big eyes, big lips, long tongue, the same caricatures they made of us during Reconstruction. You can't read between them lines. And then what she does, turn into a damn frog at the end of the movie and hop away. And y'all don't see the racism in that. Every movie you watch is political. Y'all keep thinking that when you sitting in front of Scandal and Basketball Wives and you laughing, you think it's a damn joke. It ain't no joke. Do you know most white people in America will never come in direct contact with black people because they don't have a reason to? Do you know how they learned about us? They learned about us through the TV. And they think what Kevin Hart is doing and the movies Tyler Perry is putting out there, they think that's who we really are, y'all.
That's true.
You don't believe me? Go to a white movie theater when a black comedy come out and listen how loud they laugh. You'll never want to laugh again. And then they go what? To the Senate and to the Congress, and then they pass laws and vote on you based on the images that are projected out into the mainstream. What did young Malcolm Shabazz say before he passed away? Same thing I said. He probably got it from Dr. Umar. I said, before they kill a person, they kill the image of the person in the people's mind. It ain't no coincidence they letting all this gangster rap music go on. They want to kill the black man's image. So when the police kill your son, nobody gives a damn because after all, the community was better off without him. Kill the image of the black woman. She can't find a husband. All she want to do is have sex. She's oversexed. She's in love with white men. Da-da-da-da-da. Same images from slavery. So when they start giving your daughters the morning after pill, well, maybe it's a good thing for them. Everything is political. Fred Hampton told y'all that. Wake up and smell the coffee. Latinos, Mexicans, and Hispanics Latinos have a history of identifying with white people against the interests of black people and have sought to become white ever since they got here. Do you know the Mexicans went to court and got the right to call themselves white? The Latinos wanted to be white, but they was just too damn black. So the white man said, we're going to call y'all Hispanic because you cannot be white with that booty and that haircut. That's a true story. You don't get Hispanic in the U.S. Census until the 1970s. 1960s at the earliest, because they are black people. That's why when you look at the census, what does it say? Hispanic, not black. If you're not black, why the hell you got to qualify it for? The slave ship dropped some of us off in Puerto Rico, some of us off in Cuba, some of us off in Haiti, some of us off in Jamaica, and some of us off in Virginia, some of us off in Philadelphia. We're the same people with two different slang languages. But the light-skinned supremacy complex of the Caribbean was so deep that when the Puerto Ricans and Cubans got here, your African brothers and sisters, they hated their skin so much that they tried to make a race of their own separate from you. And people running around talking about Hispanic black unity. What the hell is that? Hispanic is black. They want to unify with me. Stop hiding about who you really are. Then we could unify. But don't expect me to treat you like you don't belong to this when you do. Talking about some Jennifer Lopez. There ain't nothing but a black body. What's so special about hers? And she had Puffy all brainwashed, his foolish self. Chasing that woman around like that. She dumped her for Ben Affleck. And then Ben Affleck's mother told him, don't you bring her home to my house. She knew she was a black woman. And y'all out here fighting for immigrant rights. President Obama opened up the floodgates so immigrants could come to Virginia and Maryland and take all your jobs because you want to be equal with everybody. Your bleeding heart want to get our children in trouble. 8 years of Obama, and we ain't asked him to do nothing for our children. Shame on y'all. You don't worship no politician. Who told you to turn an elected official into a damn celebrity? Y'all running around with Obama shirts and posters, spending your savings to go to inauguration. He might as well be a damn rapper, come out with a single. You say, well, he took care of the gay people, he took care of the Hispanic people. You know why? Because they had a conversation before they voted. They put demands on their table. That's why they got Supreme Court justice. You ain't getting nothing because you treated him like he was a damn entertainer. And our children are going to suffer because of that. Because he's the first president in history that black people have asked to do nothing for them. So do you know what happens? When the next president gets in there who will be white, you won't be able to demand nothing because every last one of them have an alibi. You know what their alibi is? Can you first explain to us how you had somebody who looked like you and they asked him to do a damn thing as bad as black people suffering in this country? You and your damn Messiah complex. Going to get our whole children's futures messed up. Expanding whiteness. More than 20 million dark Europeans came to the United States after 1885 to replace blacks in the labor sector to ensure black economic power couldn't place demands on white capital. I want y'all to understand this because it's happening all over again. After Reconstruction, the government brought whites and Asians and Koreans into America to work. Why? Because they didn't have enough people? No. They decided that white capitalism should never rest on black labor. If it did, black people would be able to do what? Control American society through their labor. So they brought in other people to make you irrelevant. And they doing it now with the damn Mexicans. Ain't this crazy? If you're an illegal immigrant, if you can find a job, you can stay even though you're illegal. That makes sense to anybody here? If I'm illegal, how can it be legal for me to stay? Because we need you to replace black people because we sending all them to prison. The purpose of public school until they fully shut it down is to do what? Prepare all black girls for a life of poverty and all black boys for a life of prison. What are you going to do about it? See, I have a method to my madness, and that is to build them schools. Because I know it starts with that baby's mind. What are the 6 sciences we're going to teach in the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy? We're going to teach agricultural and agronomical science. There's no culture without agriculture. Your children got to learn how to grow their own food. We're going to teach them how to grow food in their room. You got a spare room in your house? Turn it into a garden. White man ain't even got to know you got food growing in there. We're going to teach them financial and economic science because black people are money illiterate. We don't know about wealth and how to accumulate it. We don't know about interest rates and what they mean. We don't know about stocks, bonds, treasury notes, or the resources under the ground in Africa that makes the world go round. Your child will be a master of money. They'll be able to help you control your damn spending habits. That's what we're talking about. I don't want them to go open up a McDonald's. I want them to build a chain of restaurants that's totally holistic food that will put McDonald's out of business. Your children are not coming to my school to be taught how to work for white people. They getting that already. They coming to my school to learn how to work for themselves. When they graduate, they will have a business plan that they'll be able to implement. And they'll be able to borrow a small business loan from the school to go into business after graduation. Hell with your college. You keep it. You go. We keep talking about historically black colleges. How about a modern black college? Because all the HBCUs, and I love them to death, don't get me wrong, because we wouldn't have half the black professionals we got without the HBCUs. But the HBCU was designed to do what? Help the black person fit into society. That days is over. Ain't no place for you to fit no more. We need a whole new set of black schools that teach our people how to fit into their own damn society. All right. That's the education I'm talking about. All right. And ain't no school on earth doing it, so I got to set the trend. Right. The chameleon effect. When Jews came to America, they began to intermarry with others and disguise their identity to avoid racism. To be successful, they couldn't identify with the black struggle directly. That's why Jewish people, you don't even know who they are. They got English names, Irish names. Hell, they might even got black names. What's your last name, sir? I'm Raheem. Because they didn't want nobody to know who they were. You don't know who the Jews are, they hide. That's why you got to be careful when you talk about Jews. And I'm not talking about anti-Semitism. How can you be, first of all, if you're Semite, that means you're half something. What's the other half? Half white and half white? That's not a Semite. Semite means you got something else in your blood. See, the reason why white folks from Southern Europe were not considered white is because everybody knew they had black in them. That's why they used to call the Italians, what did they call the Italian? Guinea. From Guinea, from Africa. That's why the Italians are dark. The Greeks are dark. You seen a true Greek? A true Italian? A true Jew? Some of y'all darker than them. Excuse me, some of y'all lighter than them. Okay? Revolution in 1940, the census included all white people as white for the first time. European and Caucasian are not the same. Who knew that? European and Caucasian are not the same. You could be a Caucasian and not be a European. Like, wait a minute, break it down. Let me break it down for you. When Chinese tried to argue that they were Caucasian, it was accepted. But it was clarified that being Caucasian doesn't mean you're white. White is generally reserved for those of Anglo-Saxon, English, Protestant, and Nordic stock. Y'all didn't know that the Chinese sued in court to be classified as white, did y'all? Mexicans won, Chinese lost. They say, yeah, you Caucasian, but you're not white. Ain't that something? They're Caucasian, but you're not white. See, the Arab, the Asian, and the white man are all cousins. They all come from the same place. And that's why on the census, the Arab, when he fills out the census, what box does he check? White. The Arab is white for U.S. Census purposes. Post 911, Bin Laden, Saddam, they all cousins. White. You let them play that game on you. That's when an Arab come to America, he treats you worse than a white man treats you. And you run up to him, Assalamu alaikum. That don't mean a damn thing to them. Use no religion. Only person get caught up on religion is you. Arab ain't caught up on that. He might be Muslim, but he Arab first. He ain't going to help you open up one of them gas stations. You ain't getting one of them stop and goes. You run around with the East Indian, my East Indian brother, he a Muslim, we going to pray. He ain't helping you open up none of them supermarkets they got. It stopped at the mosque. It stopped at the church. And that's why Mr. Garvey said we got to practice race first. Put the race before your religion. You was born African. You wasn't born Muslim. You chose that. You chose Christianity. Whatever you belong to, you chose it. And ain't nothing wrong with it. But understand that God chose your race. You chose everything else. Here is the census, brothers and sisters. Now let me show you how they play games on black folk. This is the current census classification. Now look at this now. Up top, you got white. Europe, Middle East, North Africa. If you live in North Africa, you could be blue, black, purple, and you must check white when you come to America. Did you know that? That's right. You can live in Libya, Mauritania, hair nappier than mine, skin blacker than mine. When you come to America, you got to check white. In fact, there's a famous scholar right now from Africa fighting the United States immigration because he said, I am African, and they say, no, you must check white because you live in North Africa. And then you got us. Black, not Hispanic, includes Africa and the Caribbean. Well, last time I checked, Puerto Rico and Cuba was in the Caribbean too, ain't? So how they opt out? Probationary white status. Then you got Hispanic, not black. Why are you qualifying if they're not us? Then you got American, Indian, and Alaskan. Have you ever seen a damn Alaskan? They got an afro bigger than Dr. J. Have you seen these people? What am I trying to show y'all right now? I'm trying to show y'all that the whole damn census is African people except the whites. But they broke us into groups. Divide and conquer, separate and rule, make the enemy think we see them as different groups and they will fight against each other for privilege. Look at the next group. Asian. Northern Asians, they white. Have you seen some of them Vietnamese? Cambodian? Blue, black, purple? Read Ramnoko Rashidi, read Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. Watch Hidden Colors. We broke that whole thing down. First Asians was Africans. Samurai warrior, that came from us. Ninja, that came from us. Then you got Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. Are you kidding me? Have you ever seen a damn Samoan? Who remember Jimmy Snooperfly Snooker? That was he or was he not a brother?
Yes, sir.
Big nose, big lips, big afro. And they talking about they their own group. And then you got the new group. Tiger Woods and Obama. Biracial and multi. What the hell is that? My ancestor Frederick Douglass, my grandfather, his brother Stephen, they were products of rape. Aaron Anthony, who owned my family, raped both their mothers. Aunt Harriet, Grandma Betsy. Did anybody ever call them biracial? Look at all the great black leaders who was of mixed stock during slavery and Reconstruction. Did anybody call them biracial? It was called black or the N-word like the rest of us. But then all of a sudden we hit 2010. Now you got a new label. If you don't want to be black and you got a white ancestor, you ain't got to say you black no more. You can say you biracial and multiracial. What is the significance of doing that? The significance is it shows the government that you don't identify with your race. That's the significance. Everything you see on here is black except the top one. But it's all for what? People who don't want to be black. I don't want to be black. I want to be biracial. I don't want to be black. I'm a Pacific Islander. I don't want to be black. I'm a Southeast Asian. I don't want to be black. I'm Alaskan. I don't want to be black. I'm Hispanic. I got to read through the lines, brothers and sisters. But guess what's going to happen when black people fix our situation? Because we are going to fix it. I didn't come here to preach no doom and gloom. We're going to get up out of this. It's already been written in the stars, but you got to work the plan. God ain't going to do the work for you. You got to do it. My biggest problem with Western religion is that it teaches you that God works for you. African religion, God works through you. The stars have already lined up. The ancestors are already in place. The only thing they're waiting for is for you to get off your ass and get to work. What did Tiger Woods say? I'm not black. I'm Cablinasian. He made a damn race. I'm Caucasian, black, Indian, and Asian. No, Negro, you crazy. And when you cheated on that white woman, they showed you was crazy. Did y'all see the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine? After he went to, you should have seen they had his pants sagging, his hat was on backwards, and he ain't had no shirt on. They had him look like a street thug, talking about you ain't black. And now you're trying to get back with that white woman because she went from being a housewife to a millionaire overnight because you cheated. Now brothers say the sisters are gold diggers. Y'all know these $90 million black women who got $90 million just for a divorce? Hell, sister be lucky she get a quarter of your pension. Ain't no sisters gold digging. Some Europeans doing the gold digging because y'all don't even marry the sisters. And that's why, sister, when a black man go to another woman, you don't let him come back home and get none of that African cookie. Well, I feel sorry for him. He didn't really know what he was doing. His parents made him marry her. Don't make an excuse. You let him come back there, you become his bed witch. You don't do that. He giving a white woman all the credentials, and here you is in the secret, in the dark. He telling his kids, go get your mom some, tell your mom I need a plate of food, some of that Thanksgiving food. Because you know, they ain't got no seasoning in their eggs. They put the mayonnaise on the bread, it be this damn thick. I know, because my uncle used to date one, and she used to make them sandwiches. Oh, God. I got to go. I don't understand y'all. And black women age like nobody. 40-year-old black woman look like she's 25. 50-year-old black woman look like she's 30. 60-year-old black woman look like she's 40. Now, even though I said you look like you're 40, I didn't say dress like you're 40, Grandma. Keep it humble. But my point is, sisters age well. You marry somebody who ain't got that collagen and melanin in their skin. By the time they drop 3 babies, they look like a great-grandmother. The chin start hanging, look like a turkey. You see them when it's like, that's your grandmother, that's your mother-in-law, no, that's my wife. Damn. Brothers start to feel it when they get old because they're not attractive no more. They start stretching out. Sisters hold. White welfare. Then they want to say that what? Black folks always crying for welfare. Do you know that white folks got more welfare than anybody else put together? What's the biggest welfare law in American history? The GI Bill. That's right. World War II. What we going to do? We're going to let all the white men coming back from the war get preferential jobs, housing, health care. That's right. That was the biggest welfare program of all time. That day you said, I want to go to the suburbs, and what did they say? You ain't got the credit. But you said the white folks ain't had the credit either, but they still let them escape out. So then you said, well, if I got to stay in the inside of Washington, D.C., let me own where I live. And what happened? They said, we can't find nobody who will finance a home in the hood. Sorry. You know why they did that? Why did they do that in 1940? Because they knew in 2010 they would be coming back to get those properties. Y'all see that? All real estate decisions are made at least 10 years in advance. They planned it. That's why they're taking back all the big cities. New York, you've been to Harlem? And they used Bill Clinton to gentrify Harlem. He came in, set up an office. That raised the property value. If you own something, you had to sell because Bill was there. Okay? This is what they do. Philadelphia, New York, Richmond, all over America. White people coming back. They said, put the Negroes in the suburbs since they want to chase us wherever we go. And some of y'all out there bragging, I'm the only black on the block. Kids can't play with no damn body. And soon as something go missing in the White House, they come knocking on your door. Your child got to suffer socially because you want to look good next to white people. Blessings to anybody who stay in the hood. Now, black wealth. There's no such thing as a black middle class. White families have 20 times. Did y'all hear that? White families have 20 times the amount of wealth of black families. In 2009, the average white household was wealth of $113,000. Black people got wealth of $5,600. What does that mean? You and your white coworker get fired at the same time or laid off. You got to go what? In the unemployment line. They might go in the unemployment line too, but they ain't got to work again for at least a year or two because they got wealth that can sustain them. They're not even rushing to go back to work. You got to hurry up and find a job, even if you had a good job. You know why? Because you like living outside your means. Why every time you get a promotion, you got to upgrade your car? Why every time you get a new job, you got to buy a new house? What the hell wrong with y'all? We ain't got money to be wasted. Kids ain't got no schools and you out here shopping. Do you know y'all can take your Christmas money right here in Maryland, your Christmas money, and you could you could build an independent school for every black child in this area with your Christmas money? Or your Kwanzaa money, because most Kwanzaa money don't go to black businesses. Most Kwanzaa money go to Macy's and those big department stores. They sell more Kwanzaa stuff than any black bookstore you can find. Because the person who created Kwanzaa didn't have an economic program with it, so the white folks exploited it. Anything you're going to build, you must control the economics of it or it don't benefit you. Y'all kill me with all these holidays. Million Man March, we ran our butts down to D.C. That was a payday for the white businesses. You got to think all the way to the end game. Stop stopping right here. I feel good. I don't give a damn if you feel good. We want to own something. A white person can survive unemployed for years after being fired, but a black person only a couple of weeks. Half of black homes in the United States have a negative or zero net worth compared to only 15% for whites. Did you hear that? Only 15% of white homes are without wealth. Most of ours are. Talking about black folk have made progress. Let me break it down now. When we got out of slavery, we owned what? 0.5% of all the wealth in America. That was when? 1865. What do you own now in 2013? 0.5% of all the wealth in America. What is your definition of progress? Because I don't know what it is. Let me tell you mine. Progress is the extent to which a people can control and dictate their financial, economic, and political destinies. To the extent that they control their institutions and the quality of life of subsequent generations. That's mine. Let me tell you your definition of progress. To the extent that black people can be integrated and accepted by white people. So when Obama got elected, that was progress. Colin Powell got appointed, that was progress. Oprah got on TV, that was progress. That's not progress to me, that's regression. Because all you're doing is giving them power to control you. Nobody is into integration except black people. Nobody even wants to integrate psychologically except racists with low self-esteem. Nobody even wants to integrate except people with low self-esteem. Chinese people hang out with Chinese people. Arabs stay to Arabs. East Indians stay to East Indians. And you want to integrate because you ain't got no racial self-respect. White opinions about black people. More than half of all white people in America think black people are in their condition due to their own merit, lazy, less intelligent than themselves. And you got white friends, but that don't mean your white friend don't think that You're not less intelligent than he or she is. Now, we got what popping off? The FBI is back, and they looking for people to get. COINTELPRO. Assata Shakur's face is plastered all over New Jersey. She ain't been in New Jersey since 1979. What the hell is her face doing all up on the billboard? Do they have a Assata picture up there for Assata? Or do they have a Assata picture up there for you? Assata's picture is up there to let black people know that even though we dealing with Africans and Arabs and Al-Qaeda, don't y'all get out of hand. Because we still got an eye on y'all too. That's why Assata picture got plastered. They see Dr. Umar, and they see the Facebook conversations, and they see the hidden colors, and all this other stuff, and white people know something you don't know, and that is what? Black revolution comes in waves. Every 40 to 60 years, there's normally a revolution. 1860s, you had slavery. 1900s, you had the independence. Then came the Garvey movement. Then came the civil rights movement. Every 40 to 60 years, let me see now, Dr. King was assassinated in 68. 40 years after 68 is 2008. This is 2013, which means what? We are right in the middle of a decade where they anticipate that some type of a black revolution is supposed to spark. And they are preparing for it. You're actually running a few years behind schedule. So to prepare for any type of black messiah who dares rise up and electrify the militant black nationalist movement, they didn't say militant black Christian movement. They didn't say militant Jehovah's Witness movement. They didn't say militant Muslim movement. They said what? Nationalism. That's the only thing the European fears. He don't scared of no damn integrationists because they control that. He's afraid that people want to do their own damn thing and operate outside of his economic order. COINTELPRO is back. Young Malcolm Shabazz, murder. Let me see now. They say that he went to a restaurant. Do y'all know who he was with? A Mexican labor leader. Before Malcolm Shabazz went down to Mexico, he was doing what? He was in conversation with Mexican laborers in America. From what I see, and we cannot say definitively, it looks like he was going down there to aid the cause of the Mexican laborers. But guess what happened? CIA, working with the Mexican government, had him intercepted. Those two females invited him and his Mexican labor leader buddy into the restaurant. And so they started having some drinks. And then they got presented with a $1,200 bill. And they said, time out, we didn't order that many drinks. And then that's when they say the guys attacked him. And Malcolm ended up being killed. Blows to the head, blows to the sternum, blows to the neck, the stomach. But here's the interesting thing for me. As somebody who studies assassinations, as somebody who travels to different countries, I'll be going to Haiti to celebrate the voodoo ceremony that led to the Haitian Revolution. August 21st, 1791. I was born August 21st. Last weekend, I was at the Nat Turner Reserve in Southampton County, Virginia. Also began when? August the 21st. So anyhow, I study this. Black people get robbed in other countries all the time. White people get robbed in other countries all the time. I know people who've been robbed in Africa. I know people who've been robbed in Mexico. I know people who've been robbed in Jamaica, South Central America, but they never get killed. This was a murder. It was a cover-up. What do we know about all mass assassinations? They always try to make it look like somebody off the street just decided to take a life. Bull crap. You think it's a coincidence that he was murdered off of American soil? Of course not. They killed him off American soil so it did not look obviously like the government did it. Remember, he just got hassled by the FBI when he was supposed to be going over to Iran. He's supposed to speak at a film festival over there. What did the FBI detain him for? He already told you that he was being surveilled and cops was harassing him all throughout New York. He was under surveillance, COINTELPRO. So he decides to leave the country, and all of a sudden he's dead after having a couple of drinks. They murdered him. Why? Because he was evolving in consciousness. Young Malcolm was working on 2 books at the time of his death, and he even said himself that he felt that there was a plot and conspiracy against him. I don't think he knew it was to this extent. But once he went down there and started getting involved in that labor thing, they said, he getting too big for his britches. Remember now, he was the only living male heir of El Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. And unfortunately, just like his grandfather, we'll never know exactly who killed who. Because remember now, when Malcolm was murdered, Thomas Hare the confessed assassin, said that he was given the orders to kill, but he never said who actually ordered the killing. So we know who pulled the trigger, but we don't necessarily know who ordered it. Now, based on my studies, what do I think about Malcolm Sr. and Malcolm Jr.? I think that there was multiple people involved in it. Not no one group. It wasn't just the government. Mexico was in it, FBI was in it, CIA was in it, some of its enemies was in it, because I do know, I got information from a reliable source who said that there was somebody close to Malcolm who was an undercover agent who actually influenced Malcolm to take the trip to Mexico because he wasn't totally sold on it. Who was that? Oh yeah. There's a lot that's out there that ain't out there. See, before Malcolm was murdered, I was supposed to meet with Malcolm. Some of his elders got in touch with me and want me to sit down and rap to him a little bit just to kind of be like an older brother type of influence on him because he don't have an older brother. I don't have one, so I know what that was like, but I'm the oldest of mine. So I said, sure, I'll meet with him. They thought because I'm a Pan-Africanist, his grandfather was a Pan-Africanist, a Garveyite. I was raised Muslim. His father was Muslim, so they said this might be a good thing for Malcolm. I said, sure. We tried to make it happen a couple of times, but it didn't happen. We came this close, and the next thing you know, he's murdered in Mexico. I'm not saying him meeting me had anything to do with it, but I do know that collaborations are feared by the FBI. What happened with Malcolm? Malcolm was killed a week after what? He met with Betty Shabazz while Dr. King was in jail. They agreed to work together. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the Organization of Afro-American Unity was coming together. And the next week, Malcolm is dead. They fear collaborations or coalitions. If you read the COINTELPRO paper, one of the goals of COINTELPRO was to do what? Prevent coalitions. Prevent the rise of a black messiah and prevent organizations and individuals coming together to form a pact. All these assassinations have stuff in common, and they all smell like FBI and CIA. Ain't no coincidences running around here. Malcolm was on his way back to what his grandfather was doing. He had some issues. He was a young boy, what, 28, 29? Of course. Everybody do a little bumping, a little hit. He has some issues, but he still had his mission and his goal, and he was coming back to it. He was with Sister Cynthia McKinney. She was an influence on him. Other brothers and sisters was an influence on him. He was already doing his political work, and they knew that he was about to make that turn for the better, and they got him. A damn shame to kill a grandfather and a grandson, and now there's no boys living with that DNA. So brothers, if you're in the struggle and you ain't got no sons, you got to go get you a son. Get with a good doctor. Maybe you got a potion or something brothers could take to make sure they get a masculine son. Masculine child. That's very important to leave a masculine child because the women going to get married and they're going to go with the men and they might keep your last name and hyphenate it, but at the end of the day, those children are going to be raised the way that man normally says. So you got to have a masculine child, gentlemen. I got 2 daughters. I'm going to have a masculine child. So Doc, you got to show me how to make sure it's a boy.
I already got it in the work.
All right. History of the FBI. The Bureau of Investigation was founded March 16th, 1909. When did Marcus Garvey come to America? March 16th, 1916. President Theodore Roosevelt recommended that it become a permanent part of the Department of Justice. Isn't it amazing that the organization that terrorizes and kills black people is housed in the Department of Justice? Look at the hypocrisy of the American empire. COINTELPRO operated from 1956, which is the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, to 1971, which is near the end of the Black Power movement. But they weren't done, were they? Because the Assata Shakur case doesn't pop up until what, 73? 74? So if COINTELPRO was dismantled in 71, how we get the Assata situation? How we get the Huey P. Newton killing? The MOVE bombings. J. Edgar Hoover died May 2nd, 1972, but COINTELPRO lives. Is now called Black Pro, as one of my elders have shared with me recently. Black Pro is the new COINTELPRO, and the Patriot Act is COINTELPRO on steroids. President Obama has made it legal for anyone saying anything against the United States government to be labeled as a terrorist. You're black president. How do you love thee? So that means they could come in here right now and charge me with terrorism just because I don't agree with them. You ain't got to say nothing about no bombs or nothing. If you disagree with the government, you can be sent to Guantanamo. Something else I need y'all to do. When y'all go home tonight, I need y'all to tell y'all children if they ever call to the school office for any reason that could possibly lead to them being suspended or jailed, tell them to tell the principal, assistant principal, dean of students, I do not feel comfortable answering any questions without my parents being present. Did y'all hear me? Because some of your children are running a mouth like you do in the school office and it's getting them arrested. Tell them they have a right to remain silent even in school. Y'all didn't know that, but y'all know it now. Also what? It's also important that you tell your sons and your daughters that when you get angry at somebody, never make terroristic threats. We got black boys being expelled from school for making threats that they never intended to carry out. I'll blow this damn school up, you make me mad again. I'll kick your ass, you say that one more time. Y'all know what y'all sons is saying. They don't mean it, but guess what? Do that white middle class teacher care if he means it or not? That's just the ammunition she needs to get him sent to the discipline school. Talk to your kids and teach them verbal and emotional discipline. The ability to do what you don't feel like doing when it got to be done, whether you like it or not. 6 official COINTELPRO operations. These are the only ones they admit to. We know there's a bunch of them they don't admit to. Malcolm Shabazz was a COINTELPRO operation, but they're not going to admit to that. Communist Party had a COINTELPRO op against them, 56 to 71. Group Seeking Independence for Puerto Rico had a COINTELPRO op, 60 to 71. The Socialist Workers Party and the Communists had a COINTELPRO op from 61 to 71. White hate groups. Yeah, that's interesting. To be honest, I think they just added them to the list. Because everybody knows that damn white hate groups are paramilitary and para-government. The Ku Klux Klan helped kill Dr. King. Y'all do know that, right? The Ku Klux Klan worked with the FBI and the Mafia to kill Dr. King. So how the hell you had a COINTELPRO op on the white hate groups when they help y'all out? Lucky Luciano and Maya Lansky worked for the government distributing drugs into the black community. Black nationalist hate groups, 1967 and 1971. Ain't that interesting? Hate. I don't know of any black nationalist group that ever taught hate. Never. But they had to label us hate. And then some of y'all make your kids think that if they say that they are nationalists, that mean they hate white people. We don't teach hate. That's not our culture. I don't teach no child to hate white folks. I teach them to love themselves. But you so damn brainwashed that when we say black nationalism and black love and race first, it automatically means we hate white folks. I don't give a damn about them. They're not even on my radar. That was an ancestor. Excuse me. Yeah. And then the new left, 68 to 71. That could be anybody. They clumped Malcolm in the new left too, but Malcolm was gone by 68. Once he started dealing with the socialists, then they said he was a leftist. Malcolm wasn't no leftist. Malcolm was a Pan-Africanist. They tried to make him everything, a leftist, an integrationist, a white lover. That got to understand the difference between propaganda and truth. Half the stuff Malcolm said on the microphone was propaganda. Half the stuff Dr. King said on the microphone was propaganda. You don't reveal your arm when you're at war. You don't show your whole hand in a card game. Y'all problem is y'all take verbatim what people say on the microphone in front of white folks. You got to know strategy from substance. Marcus Garvey. What do we know about the greatest black leader of the 20th century? Largest black organization of all time, 15 million members. You could take every black group started after Garvey, including the NAACP and the Urban League, and you don't get 15 million nowhere. That's what Garvey did. There was no internet, no cell phone, no TV. My goodness. Ain't that something? How do you organize 15 million Africans all around the world with no internet, no TV, no cell phone? Look at that. Malcolm X wasn't born yet, but his parents was in the Garvey movement. Minister Farrakhan wasn't born yet, but his family was in the Garvey movement. There's no Nation of Islam, but Elijah Poole was in the Garvey movement. Dr. King wasn't born yet, but his family was influenced by Marcus Garvey. From him came everybody else. Any organization that claimed that their leader did not take a page out of Marcus Garvey's book is in denial or a liar. Our children don't even know who Marcus Garvey is. He's the only blue, black, purple, black man to ever lead a mass movement. Every other leader after Marcus Garvey passed the brown paper bag test. Do you want to know why? Because y'all won't follow nobody if he looks too dark. Your leader's always got to be tan or lighter. It's a psychological reality. That's why you hate Clarence Thomas but love Barack Obama. That's right. Neither one of them do nothing for you, but because Clarence is dark, he gets treated poorly. And because Obama got good hair. Y'all worship him. You got to deal with light-skinned supremacy in the black community. And when I talk about light-skinned supremacy, I'm not talking about light-skinned people. Any black person could be a light-skinned supremacist if you consider dark-skinned to be inferior. Clarence Thomas is blue, black, purple. But guess what? He's a light-skinned supremacist. He don't like nothing around him that ain't light-skinned. And that's why he's married to George Bush's cousin. He's married to George Bush's cousin. And had the nerve to marry Rush Limbaugh in his own house. The most racist radio personality in the world was married by Clarence Thomas, who happens to be an ordained minister. Marcus Garvey, the first full-time black agent in the FBI's history, was hired to infiltrate the Marcus Garvey movement. J. Edgar Hoover made his reputation off Marcus Garvey. His first assignment was to break down Marcus Garvey. The people who helped Marcus Garvey buy those UNIA ships, the ones that sunk, they was undercover agents for the FBI. Oh, it's off? Oh, I was off. All right. So some of y'all say the Black Star Line was a failure. Black Star Line wasn't no failure. Are you aware that those ships that Marcus Garvey bought did sail to different countries in the Caribbean, did transport Africans, did transport goods? They don't tell you that part. And why did Marcus Garvey put ships on the water in the first place? Because the white folks had the Green Star Line, which was the Titanic, but they didn't let black people on that ship unless you was in the basement cleaning with the mice. So he says, since white folk got a White Star Line, we're going to have a Black Star Line. And people laughed at Marcus Garvey because they failed to realize that he was ahead of his time. And y'all still laughing now, but look at you. You ain't got no damn ships. Do you know that 90% of everything you eat, you wear, you drive, you use, comes on a ship today? Marcus Garvey was way ahead of his time. And a sincere brother, too. When he died broke. He didn't hardly have any money. Everything he got, he gave. Most of the people who came after him died rich because they was hustling as opposed to struggling. That's a whole nother topic. I don't put all the leaders in the same box. You can do that. I don't do that. There's sincere people, and then there's hustlers. I don't put them in the same box. J. Edgar Hoover earned his stripes in helping to destroy Garvey. Sam Cooke. Y'all remember him, right? Why wasn't a change going to come in the Malcolm X movie that Spike Lee directed? Why did you not hear that song? Because when Sam Cooke was murdered, his white manager, who a lot of people think helped get him assassinated and believe was working along with FBI and the COINTELPRO, owned all of Sam Cooke's catalog. So when Spike Lee went to him and requested to use A Change Gonna Come in Malcolm X, he was denied because all of Sam Cooke's music is owned by white folks. His family owns none of it. And why was the FBI so afraid of Sam Cooke? Why did they conspire with the music industry to kill him, just like they did Tupac and Michael Jackson? It's because this was the first major artist to own his own label and the first major artist to own his own masters. Sam Cooke mastered the music game way before Jay-Z or these other people. And I ain't gonna even talk about him because he's done nothing for Brooklyn but sell it out. They killed Sam Cooke because Sam Cooke agreed to finance Malcolm X and Dr. King once they came together. He was very close friends with Malcolm and Muhammad Ali. They were strategy partners. They would come together and strategize their next steps. And Sam Cooke said, you know what? After you do this merger with King, I'm a finance y'all. FBI heard about that, got with, what was it, RCA Records or was it Sony? Sony killed Mike. I forget who killed Sam. And said, he got to go. This Negro think he's Puff Daddy or somebody. And the next thing you know, they said, what? He was at a hotel with some prostitute. Then he busted to the hotel office, and the hotel attendant was there, and she was so scared. Then she pulled out a gun and shot him. Only problem is what? Family said when they saw his body, he was beaten so badly, his head was decapitated from his shoulders. A gunshot could do that, brothers and sisters? They said his knuckles and his wrists and his fingers was all mangled and broken. A gunshot do that, brothers and sisters? They said Sam Cooke looked like he had been beat with baseball bats. But the official coroner's report say what? He died from a gunshot. Sam Cooke was murdered by the music industry because he was plotting revolution. He was going to bring more artists under his wing, and he was going to finance the unified civil rights struggle. Michael Jackson would die 50 years later, partly for trying to do the same thing. The music industry is a secret society. And for those of y'all who got children who are aspiring to get into that world, you better teach them what it's about. Your sons want to be a great rapper, and they want to sell 1 million albums, and they want to be a $500 million megastar. Make sure your son knows, honey, in order for you to break that barrier, young man, you're going to have to bend over and pay the price. That's right. You must get sodomized as a black man in America if you want to break 500 million. And any black man you know who has broken 500 million has paid the price. That's the way it goes. Because the white man don't let you get rich unless he got a card he can play on you if you ever get out of hand. And the best card to play on a black man is to sodomize him. Oh, you want to get black again? We're going to let everybody know that we done had a pony show with you. This is real rap, y'all. If you don't believe me, study the books that's put out there. I'm not into the whole Illuminati thing because I think people have made too much of it. Okay? But you do need to know a little bit about that. You don't get rich unless you pay a price. Oprah had to pay it. Cosby had to pay it. Them people didn't get rich for nothing. Now, Cosby a little old school. I don't necessarily know if he had to bend over and pay the price, but all the new jacks had to. They don't play with y'all. They don't play with the white man. Even the white man got to get sodomized in order to get rich. Sam Cooke drew suspicion from the FBI because he did not want to play before a segregated audience. Sam Cooke said, if you keep my people in the back and put these white people in the front of my concert, I'm not playing. Goodbye. Guess who else used to do that? I heard Miles Davis was the same way. I'm not playing in front of no segregated audience. You can't make me. Let my people come up front and hear me. I'm walking the hell out. That's what real manhood is about. Sam Cooke helped start that off. In 1960, he signed a deal with RCA Records that allowed him to retain ownership of his masters. Killed December 11, 1964 at the age of Christ, 33. Talking about he was shot by a prostitute. He was murdered. And then they silenced all the witnesses. And then they found out later that the black sister who worked in the hotel lobby who shot Sam Cooke was on the payroll for the music industry. I better know how deep it go. But you can't get paranoid because you live in enemy lines, brothers and sisters. Don't get paranoid because then you lose your reasoning. What did Marcus Garvey say? Some of us are going to die. You get up to do this work, you're going to die. But he said, that ain't the problem that you might die. The problem is we ain't got nobody to replace you. Dr. King died in 1968. He had his faults. Dr. King wasn't perfect, but he was damn sure committed, at least in the final years. Who got up to take King's place after he died? Nobody. Look at us, y'all. What, we 45 years after King? You ain't get nobody significant yet. Who, Jesse? Al? Who you got? 45 years and you still ain't get a replacement for King. 50 years you ain't get a replacement for Malcolm. Damn near 100 years you ain't get a replacement for Garvey. 50 years you ain't get a replacement for Medgar Evers, who we always conveniently leave out of the discussion. He was the first one to do it. Marcus Garvey said, leaders must die, but you must have others to replace them. The problem with the black community is we don't groom our next generation of leaders. We go to church and pray for the Christ to send us one. And then the FBI sends you one. If you want leaders, you got to make them. That's why my school, we're going to train them in leadership. They're going to master the tactics of COINTELPRO. You got to make leaders. You don't wish for them. You don't pray for them. That's why you don't get none, because you ain't manufacturing leaders. You got to have black boys who are raised from childhood, knowing that they might got to pay the ultimate sacrifice for their people. Malcolm X, what did Hoover say in his directive to the FBI officers? We must prevent the rise of a black messiah who could unify and electrify. Unify, unity. White man is scared of black unity. And electrify, charisma. The militant black nationalist movement, Malcolm X, might have been such a messiah. Now, some of y'all think that was wrote before they killed Malcolm. That's actually wrote almost 3 years after they killed Malcolm. Which means to me, as far as I'm concerned, that was an admission of guilt. Look at it. Malcolm X might have been, but we took care of him to prevent that. Then they said what? Dr. King and Elijah Muhammad were aspiring to that position at the time. But neither one of them could occupy that. Mr. Muhammad wasn't charismatic, and too many of the young revolutionary brothers thought Dr. King was too mainstream. So So they could never get that Malcolm energy. Nobody was able to get the Garvey energy closer than Malcolm, I believe. Khalid was on his way. But I think Khalid was too dark-skinned for a lot of y'all, so he never was able to get a lot of members. James Farmer, check this out. Interesting theory on Malcolm's death. James Farmer of CORE. Y'all know Farmer because y'all saw Great Debaters. He was a little fat, chubby kid in Great Debaters. But he grew up and he started the CORE movement, right? Congress of Racial Equality. Guess who he said killed Malcolm? James Farmer of CORE suggested that Harlem drug lords and the international drug trade dealers killed Malcolm, not necessarily the FBI and the CIA. Allegedly, he met with a woman while he was in Ghana a couple months before Malcolm was killed. Farmer went to Ghana, and he met with a woman. I don't know if it was a black woman or a white woman, but he met with this woman. This woman said she needed to talk to him. And he met with this woman in Africa, and this woman in Africa told her that Malcolm is going to be killed, and he's going to be killed by a gang much more stronger than the Nation of Islam. Malcolm's death, well, they said the theory was that Malcolm was speaking so hard against drug dealing and drug use that it may have declined sales. I think the motive is kind of weak, personally. But I do find it kind of interesting that this woman told him that Malcolm would be dead in a couple of weeks or months, and he was. Like I said, I think there was multiple interests in that. I don't think that was no one thing. That was not just the CIA. It was not just the FBI. It was not just the nation. It was not just the gang lords. It was several people involved in Malcolm's take. And I think there was several involved in Shabazz's take, his grandson. I don't think it was no one entity. We know that what? John Ali, chief of staff for the Nation of Islam, was a paid informant. We knew that. Soon after Malcolm got killed, he contacted the messenger and said, Malcolm done. So we knew that the nation was thoroughly infiltrated. But the theoretical question is what? Can you blame the nation for the agents within it or not? That's kind of the question. But then you also got to be honest too. And as Zach Kondo and others said, I mean, it was several teams from the nation who was looking for Malcolm too. Whether the government got to Malcolm first or not, that's also debatable. I think they all got to Malcolm. I think they all did it. I think the government told its haters to get him, and they would turn the cheek. That's what I think. And I think it's interesting that Malcolm's attorney, Percy Sutton, never told nobody who he thought killed Malcolm. He always said, I will never tell who I think killed him. I don't know why. And then we got to have a conversation with Alex Haley. Well, we can't because he's gone now, but Alex Haley took 3 chapters out of Malcolm's autobiography that never made it into the book. Did y'all know that? 3 chapters, never made it in. Allegedly, a black attorney owns all 3 chapters, but ain't nobody seen them yet. And allegedly, in one of these chapters, he names the people who was plotting against him to kill him. In fact, on the day he was killed at the Audubon, Malcolm had a paper in his hand that listed all the people who was involved in the conspiracy against his death. The bloody paper ended up in Betty's hands, and then it went to somebody else's hands. I think Alex Haley might have had it, but I don't know where that paper is now. But allegedly, he named everybody who was in it. He had researched his assassination, and on the day of it, had planned to read the names. What else do we know about Malcolm's assassination? Within 2 days after his killing, he was scheduled to give a speech with Che Guevara or Castro in front of an audience of all revolutionary leaders from the second and third world within 48 hours. Now, when you hear that, that tells me that's bigger than nation. That's bigger than nation, because they wasn't into that. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay, but that's bigger than nation. Also, did you know that Malcolm was food poisoned while he was out of the country? I think while he was in the Middle East or Africa, and he had to go to the hospital, had to rush him to the hospital and pump his stomach. His aides said that was an attempt on his life right there. They tried to kill him through the food poisoning, but they got him to the hospital in time to pump his stomach. That wasn't nation either. So do I think those brothers and sisters who some people in the nation was involved? Without question. They didn't hide it. They talked about it. It was all in the paper. Farrakhan wrote his articles, whatever. So, of course. But did they act alone? I don't think they did. Is it possible that they were not ultimately the ones to take his life? That's possible, too. We'll never know. We will never know. We do know what? That all of the FBI papers on Malcolm have not been released yet. So who knows whenever they're going to release them. The reason why they're not going to release them is because they know that it points to government complicity. Because I'm going to tell you something that's real strange about Malcolm's death, and that what? 2 men went to jail for all that time who was nowhere near the Audubon. Butler and Johnson, nowhere there. Even Hayer in court said they didn't do it. And they still sent them to jail because they had to blame it on somebody. I had the attorney for the Malcolm X grassroots movement, Brother Kamal Franklin, on my radio show a couple years ago. Kamal said one of the guys who killed Malcolm, never been questioned, never been arrested. He living as a free man right now. So definitely the government was in it. But am I going to absolve certain forces within the nation? No, I'm not going to absolve. It gets deep, brothers and sisters. Why are we doing this in the first place? So you can study who killed Hilton? No, no, no. I want you to look at the pattern so you can protect your damn self. Look at the pattern so you can protect yourself. Malcolm, a gasoline container was placed on one of the rooms at Malcolm's firebound home, attempted to suggest that he burned the house himself. Did y'all know that? When they went in to inspect the house, there was a container of gasoline on one of the dressers, I believe it was. And so they tried to say Malcolm burned the house himself so the nation couldn't get it. And Malcolm said, if y'all can prove that I put that there, y'all can take my life right now. Why would I buy my house with my children living? But who planted the gasoline bottle? And then we got to talk about who? The mysterious third gunman. Y'all heard about that, right? That there was another man who was involved in shooting Malcolm, who the people saw the police escort away from the scene of the crime, never to be seen or heard from again. Why did the police protect that man? How did he get away, and what was his name? Everybody says that there was another gunman who was shuffled away from the scene. Everybody was involved in that murder. Rumors of a bullet that came from behind Malcolm, allegedly. We don't have the forensic proof, but there's certain forces who say that there was a shooting that came down from behind Malcolm to make sure that the assassination was successful, that either got him in the back or in the head. A bullet from behind, which means someone had to be stationed up front before Malcolm even came to the Audubon, before the Audubon even opened that day. He was scheduled to give a major address with Che Guevara or Castro, as I said, within 48 hours after his killing. Who knows what would have happened if he was able to get there. Then we got to talk about Dr. King's killing 3 years later. Now, this was the Prince of Peace, right? Has anybody ever read the book An Active State by William Pepper? Or Orders to Kill by William Pepper? Orders to Kill was the first book, An Active State is the second. I recommend that you read An Active State because most of what was in Orders to Kill is in an active state. William Pepper, the King family attorney who sued the FBI and CIA, proven beyond a shadow of a doubt in court they won, even though they didn't show it on CNN, proved that it was the government that killed Malcolm and not James Earl Ray. That killed King and not James Earl Ray. They won the case, y'all. They won the case. C-SPAN didn't talk about it. The news didn't. Nobody told you that the government was proven to have killed Dr. King by a white lawyer. He wrote a book where he interviewed the people involved. Do you know that the U.S. Army Green Berets was the backup shooters? They were stationed across the roof. They thought they was the main shooters, but they was the backup. They had the damn army ready to take out Dr. King, your government that you trust and love so much. Who did the FBI hire to kill King? The Tennessee Mafia. The actual gunman was a Hispanic. The actual gunman was a Hispanic. I forget his name, but you'll read it in the book. Who helped orchestrate Dr. King's assassination? The Ku Klux Klan of Tennessee. Talking about they could do surveillance over hate groups when you're working with the hate groups. What about the fact that the brothers in King's entourage saw somebody jump down, come out the building and go running, nobody went after him? Why not? Because it was an inside job. Jesse Jackson was on the ground when King got shot. He runs up the steps and wiped Dr. King's blood on his body. Who does that? Some of y'all saying, are you sure? Read the book. Don't believe nothing I told y'all tonight. I know I'm based on facts, but I need you to know it for yourself. Why did Messy Jesse rub Dr. King's blood on his body and then point away from where the shots came from? Can I go a little bit deeper? When you read the book, you're going to find that the Green Berets said that they was told that friendlies would not be wearing ties. Friendlies would have on no tie on the day of the killing. Jesse didn't have on a tie. How did the Green Berets know that people who were not to be shot were not wearing ties unless there was people in Dr. King's entourage, including Jesse Jackson, who was working for the FBI? What happened to Jesse Jackson's career right after King died? He became the HNIC. Not only that, did you know that there was a certain minister in King's entourage that picked out the tie he wore that day? I wear ties for a living. Ain't no other man coming to pick out my tie. Unless he working with the people who shooting me and need to make sure I got on a certain tie so they know not to hit him. And then the same pastor who gave Dr. King his tie to wear for the morning walked away from Dr. King. And as soon as he turned to leave King, he was shot on the balcony. How about Dr. King wasn't even going to go out on the balcony, but somebody told him to come on out and have a smoke? How about there was a security detail that was sent to protect Dr. King at the Devon Lorraine Hotel, and Jesse Jackson told them, never mind, y'all can be relieved. How about Dr. King was supposed to be staying in the basement of the hotel, but somebody from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference called the hotel before he got back after he made his famous mountaintop speech and transferred his room upstairs? Who was working against Dr. King in his own office back in Georgia? One of those pimping pastors who was so mad at King because he was getting all the attention and dared turn the church into a revolutionary force instead of a let's just get ready for heaven force? Because you know he had to fight the elders in the church. They couldn't stand Dr. King because he said we can't just sit here and talk about Jesus and not work. Dr. King was not a nationalist, but I respect him. He went to Marcus Garvey's gravesite in Jamaica right after Malcolm died, before he was killed. And he said Marcus Garvey was the first significant leader to organize black people in America. And people around King said that when he came back to America after visiting Mr. Garvey in Jamaica, his grave, they said he started giving speeches like Garvey. And that's where the CIA and FBI moved in on King. You got to read King's speeches the last year of his life. See, the white man handpicked speeches for y'all to read. When you get a Dr. King CD, he handpicked, I Have a Dream, Mountaintop. He don't give you the good stuff. He don't give you that Marcus Garvey Dr. King. He give you King the Integrationist. That's why you got to get the anthology of all of King's speeches and read the ones at the last year. Stop being lazy. Read that last year of Dr. King. You would think you're reading Marcus Garvey or Malcolm. And why was the police, black cops stationed in buildings across the way from King, relieved of their duty? They was told to get off post. They said, no, we defending Dr. King. We got to keep a watch out. We said, go home. Here's a man who preached peace, and look what they did to him. Sent the damn Green Berets out. But guess what? I got to back up. Was Marcus Garvey the first major black leader to have an informant spy on him? No. Who had an informant spy on them before Marcus Garvey? Booker T. Washington, the great sage of Tuskegee. Who was the agent working for the U.S. Army Intelligence who was spying on Booker T. Washington? His vice principal, R.R. Moton, the man who Marcus Garvey said he couldn't stand. Remember when Marcus Garvey got to America, Booker T. had already died, but he went to Tuskegee anyway to talk to R.R. Moton. And Marcus Garvey said, I couldn't stand that man or nothing about him. Mr. Garvey knew something. We found out later that R.R. Moton was a U.S. Army spy sent to Tuskegee to spy on Booker T because he was using Tuskegee Institute as a hideout for black revolutionaries. And you thought he was a sellout. Don't be so quick to judge. Dr. King, shooters were informed that friendlies were not to be wearing ties. There was no pursuit of the gunman that was seen fleeing from the crime. Jesse wiping blood on himself. And then the FBI presented Coretta with audio tapes of sexual relations with other women. What type of Justice Department does that? Who tapes people's sexual acts and give it to their wife? But I respect Coretta because she didn't put Dr. King's business in the street like some of y'all would have done. I would have had y'all neck snapping and shit. She said, the movement is more important than this. She took it to a grave. But every time you bring up Dr. King, some Negro cheated on his wife. He wasn't perfect, and we're not condoning what he did. But if his wife ain't say nothing about it, who the hell are you two? Assata Shakur. This sister is an elder, and your president puts up makes her the first black woman ever to be put atop of the most wanted terrorist list. Said, well, the government never sought out Harriet Tubman. Her slave master did, but the government never sought out Harriet. She was never convicted of shooting that trooper. She was only convicted of being an accomplice. So if you're only convicted of being an accomplice, how the hell you get a life sentence plus 33 years? Ain't that crazy? They admitted she didn't kill nobody, that she was only there. But even as an accomplice, they gave a life sentence plus 33 years. She said, oh, hell no. I'm getting the hell out of here. First black woman ever placed atop of the terrorist watch list. The Department of Justice claims that she shot the officer execution style while he lay on the ground. Now, here's the interesting thing. She was not convicted of killing him. But when they put her posters up in New Jersey a couple weeks ago, they remixed the story. And now they're telling everybody that she killed the cop, even though she was never convicted of killing the cop. Look at how they play with the law. If the transcripts say the woman was not convicted of killing the cop, who are you to come back 30 years later and try to say she did anyway and overturn what the damn judge and jury had to say? When did this happen? May 2nd, 1973. How many years ago was that? 43, 83, 93, 03, 40 years exactly. In fact, it looks like they did what? It looks like they put out the terrorist thing on the anniversary, May 2nd of 2013. Her comrade, Zaid Malik Shakur, was murdered that night. And the crazy thing about it, y'all, is what? They say she shot the cop, but do you know that Sada was shot in her underarm pit? So if you were shot in your underarm pit, that means what? Your hands was up. In the forensic evidence from the white people, the ballistic evidence proved that Assata Shakur's story was the accurate story. She didn't even make it up, y'all. It was the accurate story. She didn't try to kill nobody that night. Forensic evidence proved that her hands were in the air when she was shot as the bullet went through her underarm pit. She was convicted in 1977, 4-year trial, first-degree murder, and subsequently escaped prison in 1979. She's been living in Cuba since. Sentenced to life in jail plus 33 years. Obama's FBI raised her bounty from $1 million to $2 million. They encouraging people to go kidnap her. Y'all know that, right? They're trying to get Cubans to do it. I was reading it on the internet today. They're trying to motivate a Cuban to try to bring her back to America and get that money. And they don't care if she did or alive, by the way. They would prefer her alive so they could torture her herself. So y'all got to make sure y'all pray for that sister's life, because that could be any one of you. That could have been any one of you that night on that turnpike. Pray for that sister's life. Ask your ancestors to intervene. We got to keep watch over her. Now, for y'all Obama lovers, I don't know what else to say to y'all. I mean, what else does he need to do to convince y'all he ain't for black people? Because some of y'all are just sick. I don't get it. Fred Hampton. One of my favorites. Fred Hampton probably would have been the next Marcus Garvey if they would have left him the hell alone. I love Huey and Bobby Seale, but I'm sorry, he was stronger than everybody in the Panther Party. 21 years old. And they was great men, don't get me wrong. Me and Bobby Seale had a nice conversation up in Philadelphia a couple Black History months ago. But Fred Hampton was the man. To be that young doing what he did. Police toxicology report did not poisoning, but independent toxicology confirmed that Fred Hampton was drugged the day of the assassination. Remember what his queen said, right? She said, I tried to wake him up, and he lifted his head, and then laid it back down like he was in a stupor because he was doped up. Who doped him up? 2 Panthers who was undercover agents for the Chicago FBI. And the Panthers was very circumspect over who they let in their circle, wasn't they? So that goes to tell y'all what? They're going to send you people who you will trust. You got to watch everybody, brothers and sisters. They're not going to send you somebody you know not to trust. Negro with a 3-piece suit working on Wall Street, he can't infiltrate you. They're going to send somebody from the hood. They might send an elder, because we love our elders and we don't assume they do any wrong. But there's a lot of elderly black folk who work for the FBI. So let's wake up and smell the coffee. Don't give me no romanticized culture. I'm trying to stay alive. And any Negro can be used by the government. I don't care whether you're 6 or 60. I'm going to watch y'all all. Police came into the home shooting with no opportunity to surrender. When did this happen? December 4th, 1969, 6 in the morning. And why did they say they came into Fred Hampton's home, y'all? To serve a warrant to search for weapons. Who the hell searches for weapons at 6 in the morning? They came to kill. false letters was written by the FBI to and from the Chicago Panthers and street gangs. Most notoriously was the Blackstone Rangers, I believe. The FBI tried to start a war between the Panthers and the Blackstone Rangers, which didn't work. In fact, I think the two was about to come together and fight together. Because, you know, the Panthers almost went to war with the Nation of Islam a couple times. Yeah, they got heated a couple times. Remember Huey P. Newton sent some Panthers to Mr. Muhammad's house and told him to keep his name out of his goddamn Muhammad Speak paper? Remember that? They called them pork chop nationalists. You know, they was about to go out. I'm glad they did, because that would have been bad for the people to have them two organizations go at it, but they did not like each other. Bodyguard, Fred Hampton's bodyguard. Fred Hampton's bodyguard. Fred Hampton's bodyguard was an FBI informant who arranged for gun sales. All the guns that the Panthers bought, he helped them get them, so he knew what they were, that they was illegal, any bodies was on them. He also drew up the floor plans of the house, so when the police came into Fred Hampton's house, they knew exactly what room he was sleeping in because they had a floor plan that his bodyguard drew up. That's why when y'all be saying, Dr. Umar, you need to start traveling by yourself. No, I think I'm safer by myself. Because most of our leaders was killed by the people they groomed. Malcolm, King, Fred, Lumumba, Thomas Sankara. Look at all the black leaders who was killed by their understudies. Sabotaged by, nuh-uh. Thank you, I can ride by myself. So don't nobody know where the hell I'm at. Because my bodyguard protects me from the people, but who protects me from my bodyguard? Gene Roberts, Malcolm X, undercover agent, giving life-to-life resuscitation to a gunshot chest victim. You don't do that. And then after he helped set Malcolm up, do you know that Gene Roberts went and infiltrated the Panthers? Yes, they had a hit out on him for a little while. That man went from organization to organization, sabotaging black folk. We the only people who do this. How many of y'all got relatives working for the FBI's agents? And you don't condemn them? Well, it's just a job. Fred Hampton, his queen attempted to wake him but couldn't. He only raised his head slightly and placed it back down. After all Panthers were removed from the room, the police officer came in and assassinated Fred as he lay asleep. They got his wife out the room because they didn't want no witnesses. There was another Panther, I think, was hiding behind the door or in the closet. They got him out the room, so nobody was in the room. They was in a hallway. And this is based on their testimony. And Fred was in there sleeping. Deep sleep. They could have handcuffed him, drove him out. First of all, there's a weapons warrant, right? So if you're looking for weapons, you shouldn't have locked nobody up. You should have looked for weapons. But they had to shoot back to protect their lives. He walked in and shot Fred Hampton right in the head. Walked out and said he's dead now. They don't respect black life. The police joked about the murder in front of the Panthers. In fact, when Fred Queen came out, and I think there was another sister there maybe, you know, they had on their nightgown or whatever. They said the cops was fondling them, lifting up their shirt and stuff. Disrespecting them even after they killed Fred. This is who you're dealing with out here. Police disrupted the crime scene and tampered with the evidence, so it's hard to convict anybody. 21 years old. I got tremendous respect for Fred Hampton's son, Fred Hampton Jr., because he keeps his father's fight alive, and he keeps on pushing. Tupac Shakur, under surveillance on the day of his death, may have been killed at the hospital. Some people say Tupac was alive when he got to the hospital. They killed him there. Amos Wilson, I believe, was killed in the hospital. Some say Khalid Abdul-Muhammad was alive at the hospital and killed in the hospital. That's why a lot of revolutionary brothers and sisters don't even go to the damn hospital. They say, if I'm sick, take me somewhere else to the witch doctor, but don't take me there. Because you don't come out. You know about 10,000 black people go missing every year in America, don't you? Never to be heard from again. I ain't talking about no mass murders. I'm talking about snatched up by the government for your organs. Black organs is one of the biggest undercover markets in the world because you have the richest organs. If a rich white man needs a kidney and you're a perfect match, you think anybody gonna wait for you to die till you get that kidney so you can stay alive? One day you're gonna be coming out the gas station, you're gonna get hit by a Mack truck. God forbid. It looks like a drunk driver. No, it wasn't. That was an orchestrated kill for your kidney because he needed it to live. Black organs. Half the black people buried in the cemetery ain't got their body parts. Right after you leave, they pull them up and suck them out to the side. You know, they got all that technology. They cut a little hole in you and suck out your kidney, suck out your heart, and give it to white people. Y'all remember the Atlanta child murders? What they found? More than 500 black babies in a dumpster? right around the corner from what, the CDC? You think that's a coincidence? They snatching our kids off the street. You telling your kids to stay away from weird people, you better tell them to stay away from white folks in three-piece suits. Some of y'all getting snatched up like that. Black organ market, baby, I better wake up and smell the coffee. Obama ain't gonna do nothing about it. Tupac was organizing the West Coast gangs for political mobilization. That's why Tupac was killed. Because you know, the Crips and Bloods was started from the aftermath of the Black Panther Party. They were supposed to do good for the community. But then they got infiltrated by agents and they got turned into drug-selling, gun-toting gangs, but they were supposed to do righteous work. Right. That's right, Crips and the Bloods. Created for righteousness. So Tupac tried to work with them, get them back. Government said, we can't have this. You got the #1 selling rapper of all time politicizing gangs in LA? Oh, hell no. So they got with the music industry. Remember, all the executives of the music industry sit at the what? Council of Foreign Relations table, the Bilderberger table. They're all one family. And they put the hit out. And they use who? Police from Las Vegas and Los Angeles to knock out Tupac. But they made it look like a beef with Orlando Anderson from the gang out in LA. See how they like to cover it up with nonsense? He was killed by the government in the music industry. Suge Knight wanted him gone too because he was his bread and butter, but it was more so FBI working with the guy who was Suge Knight's co-owner of Death Row. I forget the white guy's name. You always see him posing with Suge Knight. He was, not Aveen. I don't think it was Aveen. Under Aveen. Real dark, short white dude, dark hair. He's always with Suge. I don't think it was Aveen, though. Could have been, but I don't think. But whoever he was an informant for the FBI while he was working for Death Row. That's how deep it gets. And y'all know they got the hip-hop police anyway. They watch all the rappers, make sure ain't nobody doing nothing righteous. You can sell drugs, smoke weed, but don't you try to organize black people. Jay-Z learned that. That's why he became the house Negro of the hip-hop community. Screaming Brooklyn ain't done nothing for Brooklyn. Afeni Shakur, did y'all know Tupac's mother was hooked on dope by an FBI agent by the name of Lex McDaniel, her boyfriend? His job was to hook her on drugs. I don't think y'all understand what y'all dealing with, y'all. His assignment was to get Afeni on drugs. This black woman, never been to law school. Remember the Panther 21 trial in New York? They accused all the Panthers of plotting to blow up federal buildings. Afeni Shakur went into the courtroom and did what, y'all? Defended herself and all 20 of her compatriots against the district attorney, proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they did not plot to blow up any buildings in New York. She was pregnant with Tupac at the time. A white man wrote a book on it. If you could get your hands on it, it's a rare book called The Panther 21 Trial. He said he could not believe that a black woman was able to brilliantly and intelligently argue down a district attorney to the point where all 21 Panthers who was wanted by the government walked out free while she was pregnant. Remember, Tupac wasn't born in jail. She got arrested while she was pregnant with Tupac, but Tupac wasn't born in jail. He was born after that. But he was a revolutionary child. They've been watching Tupac since high school. I mean, look, Geronimo Pratt was like his godfather, Matulu Shakur. He was raised around that. So he kept that pain and passion with him. If Tupac was alive now, we don't know what he would have done. Malcolm Shabazz, our last one. I had an agent roll up on me yesterday in Tennessee. And I had an agent roll up on me in Houston. You can always spot the agents because, number one, they act pro-black, but ain't nothing pro-black about them. It don't match. They talk and they look, it don't match. You're like, nah, you're a straight Wall Street dude talking pro-black. They're overzealous to get hooked up with you in your work. Where you at? What are you doing? I don't even know you. I mean, it's unnatural, like a regular brother, but you can feel that something ain't right. They always like to stay after the lectures. I'm not saying I got to walk out right after the lecture. But there's a science to the agent. In fact, I was talking to an elder last week. You know what he told me? He said, Dr. Umar, you need to be careful because in this thing that you do, this whole lecture thing, I've been doing some research, and some of your compatriots on the lecture circuit are also agents. I was told this last week. He said, man, you got to have a serious sit down in a meeting because there's some names that you need to know about who you come in contact with. This is what he told me. I don't know who the names are, but I'm definitely going to have that meeting. He said, I'm going to show you the evidence So you can stay the hell away from these people. I think he said it was 5. 5 people in the conscious community who does the work that I do, who I need to be wary of because they're working for the police. And this is an elder who's known for research. So that's what we're dealing with. Malcolm Shabazz, only known male descendant of Malcolm X, very interested in international relations. Muslim with connections to the Middle East. Remember, he's supposed to go to Iran. That's when he was hassled by the FBI. Active on the political front in his own way. He was with Manuel Suarez, a labor rights activist who was deported from the United States when he was killed. Remember, he was talking to Mexican labor activists before he left. Met 2 women who led them into a bar. They were later presented with $1,200 bill for the alcohol that they drank. They did not agree with the bill. Malcolm was intoxicated, and then that's when they beat him to death, allegedly. He died from blows to the head, to the ribs, and to his jaw. 2 waiters in the bar were recently arrested last week. The 2 women who brought him into the restaurant, nobody seemed to find them so conveniently. Appears to have been willing to help support the Mexico labor struggles. He was working on 2 books, and he was also working with Cynthia McKinney. Some people also said what? That young Malcolm Shabazz later recanted his confession that he burned down his mom's house, his grandmama house, Betty Shabazz, rest in peace. Some people had already said that. Some people said it wasn't Malcolm who burned that house. He was just made to take the fall. We don't know whether he burned it or not. I don't know. But they said he recanted it, and there's people who said that some of his grandfather's former enemies might have done it because she was about to do a couple of things legally herself. Some people said it might have been the government for different reasons. We'll never know. There's no definitive answers on assassinations because the government hides so much. So you got to keep, this is an ongoing story, y'all. Malcolm is an ongoing story. Malcolm Shabazz is an ongoing story. Fred Hampton, an ongoing story. Medgar Evers, an ongoing story because you never get all the facts. You got to constantly revise history as it comes. But I'll tell you in a minute, even though there was forces within the Nation of Islam who I feel were definitely involved in Malcolm's death, I don't paint the whole organization with one brush. I know a lot of good brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam. Boston, Philly, I know a lot of good ones. And so I cannot hold them responsible for something that happened before their time. And that's for any organization for that matter. NAACP and Urban League, I can't stand them too. Jewish organizations. But I know a lot of good black people who've given their time and effort to the NAACP and the Urban League, and I respect them for that. So I never judge people purely based on affiliation, and you shouldn't do that either. You're a Christian, I'm not going to throw you out. You Muslim, I'm not going to throw you out. I want to know what you're doing for the people. That's my bad. I don't care what you believe in. You can pray to the trash can if you want. But how do you think is what I'm concerned about. Not how you pray, not how you eat, but how you think. In conclusion, I want to say this. Times is getting kind of rough for African people. And we have to get organized, y'all, because it's not looking good for us. And Pan-Africanism is the only way that you're going to be able to fix this situation because all Africans globally suffer from the same enemy, white supremacy. So I implore you to get connected with Africans somewhere else in another part of the world. It could be Jamaica. I'm going to be going to London June 10th through the 14th. I'll be in Haiti in August. I'll be in Canada in July. Travel. We need those networks. If you don't have your passport, especially for my young people, get your passport. Okay? You got to be in a position to be able to move quickly. Stop buying stuff and keep your money saved up because you ain't going to be able to take all the pocketbooks on you with you in a case of emergency. Okay? Keep cash. Marcus Garvey said it's better to have money than possessions unless it's wealth and assets. Okay? Pan-Africanism is the only way. Black nationalism ain't going to do it by itself. All these other ideologies floating around here, they ain't going to do it by themselves. Can they help? Yes. But there got to be a coalition of everybody. But there must be a Pan-Africanist outlook because you are a nation within a nation. And that's another reason why Malcolm had to go because he was going to take the plight of black people, their treatment by the United States government to what? United Nations, into court. That would have embarrassed America. Remember, they're the moral police of the world. That would have embarrassed them. So Malcolm had to go. He was finishing what Marcus Garvey had started. We got to do the same thing. Black people have to stop suing in America's civil courts and take them to the world court. The United States government need to be brought to the International Court of Justice for how they've been treating black people. Just like they want to take people to the International Court of Justice, we got to do the same thing with the government. When you go to his courts, then you're automatically under his jurisdiction. I'm no more, by no means. But I respect a lot of what my brothers and sisters teach who belong to the Moorish Science Temple. And Mr. Garvey and Noble Drew Ali, they did collaborate on some things and agreed to disagree on some other things. But one thing that they did agree on, we are a nation within a nation, and we need to start representing and acting as such. That's how you win this game, by going to the World Court, finishing the job of Malcolm and Mr. Garvey. I'll leave y'all with a quote from my ancestor, Frederick Douglass. And then when I'm done, I'm going to run out and grab my box of books for those of y'all who are interested in my Unapologetically African t-shirts. Because it's time to be unapologetically African. Stop making excuses for being black. Stop fighting for everybody but your own. Hate no one, but love thyself first. Frederick said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and deprecate agitation are like men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain, but they can't stand the thunder or the lightning. They want the ocean, but can't stand the awful roar of its waters. He says the struggle we have might be moral, or it might be physical, or it might be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. He said, find out what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found the exact measure of injustice that will be used against them. He said, for 20 years I prayed on my knees to God for freedom, but the Lord gave me freedom not until I got up off my knees and began praying with my feet. He said, if you want respect, stop looking for pity. The man who respects you need not pity you, and the man who pities you can't respect you. My family was brought to this state, Maryland, Talbot County, Eastern Shore. 1701, black man by the name of Belly, stolen from West Africa. He married a black woman by the name of Selah. They had a daughter by the name of Jenny in 1745. In 1774, 2 years before Jefferson's Declaration of Independence, Jenny had my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, Queen Mother Betsy Belly. She married a free black man by the name of Isaac. Many believe was a Moor because he had never been a slave, and we don't find any slave ancestry in his line. They had about 13 children amongst them. One was named Harriet. Harriet was raped by the slave master who owned my family. His name was Aaron Anthony. Aaron Anthony took my Aunt Harriet and raped her. And in February of 1818, she gave birth to a boy, Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. The next year, Aaron Anthony raped her sister, my great-great-great-great-grandma Betsy, young Betsy, giving birth to Frederick's brother, Stephen Henry Bailey, my direct ancestor. When you read the autobiographies of Frederick, and you should have read all three by now, remember that Frederick Douglass' autobiography is one of the most groundbreaking documents of all time. Not the first narrative, but the first to be written by a slave who openly named his master, and did so with a quality of English that rivals the best literature of the day. White folks said a black slave could not have written this. Frederick Douglass challenged so many stereotypes about black folk, we ain't got time all night to talk about it. But anyway, Frederick and Stephen were brothers because the slave master was their daddy, but they was cousins because Aunt Harriet and Grandma Betsy were sisters. And when you study your family tree, you're going to find a lot of cousin-sibling connections because the slave master would sleep with all women of the same line. So the cousins was also siblings. So anyhow, when the Frederick escaped to freedom at the age of 20, changed his name from Bailey to Douglas to evade capture under the Fugitive Slave Law. He married Anna Murray Douglas, his black wife of about 50 years. She died, and then he made a mistake and married that Caucasian. He was an old man at the time, but we can't excuse it. He should have done it. I'll talk to him later when I get up to Rochester next week. His children didn't like him for it either, and I think had he not done that, he would be undisputedly the greatest black leader of all time. But he made that mistake. And I think it was partly related to the European ancestry that he had, which is why I think we need to stop having babies with other people, because our children get confused about exactly what they are sometimes. And because his daddy was white, I think he always harbored this thing where it's okay to marry a white woman because I'm half white myself. So brothers, cut it the hell out. So anyway, he sent his two oldest sons, Louis and Charles, to fight in the Civil War. He didn't have to send his sons because he was a dignitary, but he said, if I'm going to say my people got to fight for freedom, then my children got to have to give their life too. How many of y'all would do that? He sent Louis and Charles, they fought with the Massachusetts 54th Colored Regiment, from which we get the movie Glory. Morgan Freeman plays the older son of Frederick Douglass, but he doesn't play him by name. We don't know why. There was all types of lies in Glory, by the way. You know that they said most of the slaves in Glory was runaway slaves, right? How about every single participant of the Massachusetts 54th was a free black man? That's why you don't get your history from movies. Okay? So my grandfather, Stephen, he married Caroline Wilson Bailey. They had a son, my great-great-great-grandfather, who was the first black public school teacher in Talbot County, Eastern Shore, Maryland. His name was George Washington Bailey. So my grandpop and his son, my two grandfathers, they fought in the United States Colored Troops of Maryland, 7th Regiment, one of the bloodiest regiments in the Civil War. Probably the only regiment that was more courageous and bloody than that one was the 54th, where cousins Lewis and Charles were. After the Civil War, my grandpop Stephen and grandpop George, they helped build the Bethel Union AME Church. It stands today right where they used to be slaves. George Washington married Annie Wayman. They had a daughter named Caroline. Caroline relocated from Maryland to Philadelphia to live with her sister after her parents died. She had a daughter named Vivian, my great-grandma. She married a Cuban immigrant, Noel Miles, my great-grandfather, Spanish-speaking Cuban. But I don't claim to be no Hispanic. They had my grandmom Ida, who had my son Jamal, August 21st, 1974, anniversary of the Haitian Revolution and Nat Turner insurrection, the first day of slavery for blacks in America, and the George Jackson martyrdom. I was born in Philadelphia, 11th generation descendant of the first. I don't have a problem with you teaching your children religion, but can you please tell them who the hell they are first? Teach them their ancestry. All you want to do is fill them up with beliefs. Believe this, believe this, believe this, believe. That's a belief. It ain't a fact. Teach them who they are. Give them their ancestors. Help them build their ancestral altar. Every last one of y'all should have an ancestral altar in your house. I don't care if you're Christian, Muslim, or whatever. This ain't got nothing to do with religion. This is your spiritual birthright. See, I ain't got to be baptized to practice African spirituality. I don't need no shahada to practice African spirituality. No Torahs, no Bibles, no none of that. I come into the world with this package. You need a little table. You need some water, because ancestors travel through water. They communicate through water. You need a vessel of water for your ancestors. Keep the water clean. When it starts to get dirty, you change it, because it's disrespectful not to. Get you some flowers, some plants that symbolizes life. You need a candle up there. West Africa, they normally use a white candle to communicate with the ancestors. But I know a lot of black people tired of white, so get a black one. You burn that, you get you a bell. You need an ancestor bell. So whenever you want to talk to your ancestors, you ring the bell to let them know we're about to have a conversation. You light your candle, you burn your incense, and you talk to them as if they were living, because they still are. That's our culture. That ain't in the Bible or the Quran. This is your birthright. In fact, we don't even like to say African religion, because there ain't no such thing as African religion. This is African culture. When y'all talk about those guardian angels that they tell you about in church, ain't no naked white boys with no wings protecting you. Your guardian angels are your guardian ancestors. Everybody in this room got two bloodline ancestors who are assigned to look after your best interests. But if you don't call on their names, they cannot help you, because the law is spirit. The law of spirit says you have to request assistance in order to get it from the ancestral realm. Some of y'all don't know grandmom's name, great-grandmom's name, great-great-grandmom's name. The law is your ancestors going back 4 generations are the most powerful in your life. And you got 4 lines. You got mom's dad line, mom's mom's line, dad's dad's line, and dad's mom's line. You got 4 lines of roots. How many names can you name? And then on your ancestral altar, whatever you can remember about your ancestors, you put it up there. Your grandpa used to smoke a certain cigar, buy him one. If you can find his original, that'd be even better. You got pictures of your ancestors, put them on up there. Your mom got a nice big picture. Your great-grandmom, you never knew her, but you're going to get to know her now. Take a picture of the picture, put it on your altar. Draw their energy in. Ring your bell, talk to them. Don't let nobody touch your stuff on your altar, because we all got spiritual DNA, and some people's is negative. This is what you need to do. All of our revolutionaries dealt with spirit. They made you hate voodoo. They told you it was from the devil. Voodoo ain't nothing but the worship of God. That's African religion. Some places it's called voodoo. Some places it's called Santeria. In Yoruba, Nigeria, it's called Ifa. It's called Dogon. It's called the spiritual system of the Akan. Neteru and Kemet. It's the same one religion with different names. Stop playing games with yourself. And African religion is one God manifested in many different entities. Just like you got Umar the psychologist, Umar the therapist, Umar the orator, Umar the writer. I'm still Umar, but I got different faces. And so does the Most High. We don't believe in a million different gods. We believe in one chief deity who manifests herself in a lot of different faces. See, that's the problem with religion, because y'all religion keep telling y'all to pray to men.
That's right.
My father. What about your mother? In African spirituality and culture, we call on the feminine and the masculine depending on what energy we're trying to tap into. If a sister helping for a healthy childbirth, what you calling on God the Father for? He don't birth babies. You got to call on God the Mother because you want the feminine aspect of the Most High. If I got to go to war, I'm going to call on God the Father because I need the masculine aspect of the Most High. If I'm trying to build my relationship with my daughters, I'm going to call on the feminine aspect of the Most High. So sometimes when you pray, it's God the Father. Sometimes when you pray, it's God the Mother. And what's so interesting about black women, being manifestations of the great feminine principle, none of you have never called on God the Mother a day in your life. Black women never called on God the Mother a day in your life. Look how disconnected you are from your God right. You got to get back to it. You ain't got to leave the Bible. You can do this with the Bible. You ain't got to leave the mosque. You can do this with the mosque because this supersedes religion. It's culture, brothers and sisters. Study Nat Turner, he dealt with spirit. Study Shaka Zulu, he dealt with spirit. Study Nanny of the Maroons, she dealt with spirit. Study Queen Nzinga, dealt with spirit. You ain't never seen an African military leader who didn't deal with the energies because God released his or her aspects into the world for you to deal with them, and our people are masters of dealing with spirit outside of the church. You don't even got to go to hell, the church. You got to go inside because here's the temple. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Marcus Garvey said, without confidence in self, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started. When Marcus Garvey was asked, are you a Jamaican or are you an African? Are you a Jamaican or are you an African? And he said, what? I would never, ever give up a continent for an island. I am always and forever an African. Ashe, brothers and sisters. I'm going to go grab these books.
Give it up for Brother Umar. Give him a big round of applause. Come on, y'all. Was it worth the wait? Was it worth the wait? All right, we definitely appreciate this brother.